Chapter 224. After relaying a few instructions to the plant soul, Chi-Yu floated up and flew back to the camp. Was he really just going to let the Zodiac guardian god warriors cultivate comfortably on the spot? Of course not. When Chi-Yu returned to the camp, his first order was for the Zodiac guardian god warriors to rescue the people who went up the mountain. This was because the youths from the 4 families were being baptized by the twin dragons. The same torturous training was being carried out today. When the sky turned dark, the black and white twin dragons retreated again. Everyone crawled back to the camp. Compared to yesterday, the situation today was even more miserable. At least another set of clothes was destroyed. The plant soul and Shangbing completely treated Guanjing and the other 3 as sandbags. Although they controlled their strength, they still beat them up badly. Even their parents might not be able to recognize them. Emodan was arrogant. As soon as he returned to the camp, he went into his room that seemed like it could collapse at any time without saying a word. He immediately started cultivating. The others were in a similar situation. Compared to yesterday, none of them had fainted. However, none of them were complete either. If the 8 Zodiac guardian god warriors who went up the mountain worked together, they might really be able to defeat the black and white twin dragons. However, how could Chi-Yu let them succeed? When they went up the mountain, Chi-Yu also went up the mountain quietly. However, he was not going to help them, but the black and white twin dragons. With Chi-Yu's strength, he only needed to send his thundercloud force and water thundercloud force to the black and white twin dragons from afar, and it would be enough for the Zodiac guardian god warriors to suffer. Even Ryue suspected that the 2 dragons had taken aphrodisiac. Compared to yesterday, their attacks were obviously a few levels higher. If it wasn't for the fact that they used different attacks against different opponents, she would even suspect that Chi-Yu had lost control of them. A month of hard training began. The intensity of the training increased every day. After 5 days of abusive training, there would be 2 days of rest. Of course, that was not a real rest. However, without the attack of the black and white twin dragons, everyone had to climb over at least 5 mountains in the Kunlun mountain range. According to the level of the thundercloud force, the Zodiac guardian god warriors had to climb over a mountain for every cloud they climbed. Yao knew that the mountains behind them were rarely lower than 4,000 meters above sea level. Even with the physique of the Zodiac guardian god warriors, it was extremely difficult to bear. On the 5th day of the training, Ming Ming's body had completely recovered. Everyone was subtly and quietly changing. It was just that they couldn't feel it. After all, they were hovering on the edge of death every day. The only thing they could think of was how to survive better. All was that. Other than the training, they could only meditate and cultivate. Every night, Chi-Yu used the natural energy to help them recover their bodies. This was the most enjoyable time of the day. As the intensity of the training increased, the release of the natural energy became longer and longer. During this period, apart from paying attention to everyone's training, Chi-Yu was also very strict with himself. He put all his spiritual force into the cultivation of the source of nature. He knew that the source of nature would be the source of all his energy. If he wanted to surpass all the Qilins when he reached the 9-cloud realm and become the strongest among the Qilins, he would have to possess a powerful origin of nature. He wanted to become the strongest among the Qilins and hope that the mutation of his body would bring about the best situation. After all, it was the only thing that could help him produce the mutation of his body. Therefore, Chi-Yu was not in a hurry to cultivate his 4 kinds of thundercloud force to above the 7-cloud level. He only used 1 hour to cultivate the 4 kinds of thundercloud force, and the rest of the time was used to absorb the natural energy. A month passed in pain and suffering. The bodies of the Zodiac guardian god warriors had changed. The delicate and white skin of Ryue, Ming Ming, and the other girls had become a healthy color. Although they were still delicate, the darker skin made them resent Chi-Yu a lot. The ones who changed the most were the Fatso warriors. Except for Guanjing, Vol and Emodan had lost a lot of weight. Vol looked much more energetic than before. He was no longer so bloated, but had become strong muscles. On the other hand, Emodan's change was huge. She had lost 1/3 of her weight in a short period of a month. Although she still looked a little fat, her original appearance was gradually revealed without makeup. Her arrogance seemed to have been worn away by the hard training, and her appearance had gradually become delicate because of losing weight. Only the plump breasts didn't change much. She was indeed a cow. The changes in the 120 people from the 4 great families were also very obvious. Everyone's skin had become a healthy bronze color, and their gazes were clearly much sharper than before. Their energy levels had also improved greatly. The month of training had caused them to forget about the families they belonged to. Right now, there was only their own team in their hearts. Every day, they experienced the process of life and death, and almost every one of them had been rescued by others in their team, pulled back from the brink of death. This caused them to no longer have any ill feelings between them, and they had become close comrades in arms. And the relationship between the members of each team and their team leader had also become very close. Almost every day, the Zodiac Guardian God Warriors would rescue their subordinates many times and teach them some of their skills in various kinds of training, so that they could better improve their strength. All of this was gradually completed according to Chi-Yu's plan. It was the last day of the month. Chi-Yu asked everyone to gather in the open space in the center of the camp, and first distributed enough fruits for everyone to eat. Speaking of these fruits, it was also one of the important factors that improved everyone's body. Without the flashy city and the poison of tobacco and alcohol, eating these nutritious fruits every day allowed everyone to better absorb the natural energy released by Chi-Yu. Therefore, they were able to achieve their current result. This was also one of the reasons why Chi-Yu had to set the training in the era of ancient beasts. Sighing at the changes in everyone's aura in the open space, Chi-Yu could not help but smile sincerely. Although he could not see, he could clearly feel that everyone present had changed, whether it was the Zodiac Guardian God Warriors or the 120 people from the 4 big families. Now, he no longer used the term 4 big families to describe these youths, but directly called them by the names of their respective teams. For example, Vol and his subordinates were called the Zodiac Mouse Team, and so on. Although Chi-Yu did not participate in the training, the 12 Zodiac squads were indeed the most grateful to him. No one was blind. They knew very well that in the past month, they could recover from the exhaustion of the previous night to become energetic and lively every morning, completely relying on Chi-Yu's amazing natural energy. Chi-Yu helped them unreservedly, causing the members of the 12 Zodiac squads to respect him from the bottom of their hearts. Chi-Yu did not speak much every day, only giving orders. However, after a month had passed, no one had collapsed because of the high-intensity training. What did this mean? Jida, Shangbing, and Plant Soul could be said to be outside of the 12 Zodiac squads, but their improvement was no less than that of the members of the 12 Zodiac squads. They were also participating in the same training. Apart from the special care given to Guan Jing and the other 3, Chi-Yu paid the most attention to them. The energy of the spring of nature was not stingy in transforming their bodies. Although the daily training was very hard, they all knew that they had changed too much in the past month. In this 1 month, they had changed too much. Sometimes, even they themselves found it hard to believe that they could actually become so much stronger than before. Chi-Yu stood in the middle of the open space, still dressed in black. He still had the same pale hair. However, the way everyone looked at him was different from when they first arrived. Now, regardless of age, all the Zodiac Guardian God Warriors called him boss. It was the same for the members of the 12 Zodiac squads. It was Chi-Yu's selfless contribution that allowed them to persist in this month's training. That was why they could improve so much now. From the initial dissatisfaction to the present sincere gratitude, they saw too much in Chi-Yu. Everyone has worked hard. It has been almost a month since we arrived here. I think everyone can see that this is not the era that belongs to us. I am very happy that each of you can persist until the end. You did not let me down. However, I also hope that everyone can understand that the training has just begun. Although you have improved to a certain extent, especially in terms of cooperation and combat experience, it is still far from enough. In our era, it is very difficult to have large-scale battles, especially cold weapons, to hone your skills. However, it is different here. According to my plan, 3 days later, we will embark on a new journey of training. This time, you will face an even more dangerous situation. If you want to return to our era alive, you will have to put in 200% of your effort. Soon, we will climb the majestic Kunlun mountain range in front of us for the last time. Today, there will be no more attacks from divine beasts and ominous beasts, but it is indeed an opportunity for each of you. However, there is still danger. Everyone must strictly obey orders, otherwise, I will not be able to save you. All teams, according to the Zodiac, set off. Chiyu did not say what he was going to do. He floated up and was the first to fly in the direction of the Kunlun mountain range. Shangbing, Jida, and the plant soul followed closely behind him. None of the members of the 12th Zodiac team said anything. After a month of training, they had developed a good habit of obeying orders. They followed closely behind their captain, forming a long meandering dragon behind Chiyu, and set off in the direction of the Kunlun mountain range. The speed of climbing was very fast. After the transformation of their bodies by the source of nature and a month of hard training, climbing mountains was as easy as eating for these young people. As soon as the long meandering dragon entered the range of the Kunlun mountain range, under the leadership of Chiyu, it began to move forward like a jumping star. It moved forward at an amazing speed. Every once in a while, Chiyu would look back to see that no one in the 12th Zodiac team was left behind. 1 month of training was not in vain. He had his own purpose today, and it was a very simple one. It could be said that the previous month of training was all for today's sake. Crossing mountains and ridges began. The 12th Zodiac team climbed over one mountain after another. From the beginning, their light pace gradually became heavy. When they climbed over the third mountain, that was 6,000 meters high, Chiyu ordered everyone to take a break. At this time, they had already entered the inner part of the Kunlun mountain range. In the recent training, even the strongest members of the 12th Zodiac team had begun to return to the inner part of the mountain range. As the overall strength of more than 100 people increased, although the black and white dragons were powerful, facing so many enemies and with the support of Chiyu, they could not hold on much longer. After all, the strength that Chiyu gave them was limited, and the enemies they had to face were more than 100 people every day. Every day's improvement increased the combat strength of the 12th Zodiac team. The improvement of one person was nothing, but the improvement of more than 100 people at the same time was absolutely terrifying. The overall strength of the 12th Zodiac team was improving at an extremely fast speed, especially as the teams became more and more proficient in their joint attack skills. Now, under the leadership of the 12 Zodiac Guardian Gods, even with Chi-Yu's full support, the black and white dragons only dared to occasionally launch sneak attacks. They did not dare to confront the 12th Zodiac team head-on. A faint light lit up in Chi-Yu's eyes. She could already feel the cold aura from afar. After Chi-Yu gave the order to rest, the 12th Zodiac team did not talk to each other. Instead, they seized this short time to cultivate and strive to achieve the best recovery effect in the shortest time possible. This was also a principle that they had come to understand after a month of training. Before the end of training, every second was extremely precious to them. A faint light flickered, and everyone exuded a different aura. After the start of the break, the 12th Zodiac team began to disperse. Originally, the people of the 4 major families gathered together. Because the attributes of their respective families were very similar, they could better absorb the energy molecules of the air clock when they gathered together. This way they could obtain the greatest improvement in a short period of time. The strength of the Zodiac Guardian God Warriors was naturally much stronger than that of the young people of the 4 major families. At this time, although they were a little tired, they did not rest. Instead, they took the initiative to gather around Chiyu. Ryue said, "Chiyu, do we still continue to move forward? The members of each team are quite exhausted. If we continue to move forward, I'm afraid we won't be able to return to our camp before dark." Chiyu said, "Let's continue to move forward. I didn't plan to return to the camp tonight anyway." Yan Xiaoi said, "Boss Chi Chongbao, if we don't return to the camp, are we going to live on the snow mountain? Even if we can hold on, I'm afraid that the members of each team will not be able to hold on. It's too cold in the mountains, especially at night. I'm afraid that everyone will not be able to hold on." Chiyu patted Yan Xiaoi's shoulder and said, "Don't worry, I have my own plans." Because his strength was originally not strong, during this month of training, Yan Xiaoi had made great progress. At this time, he had already reached the 4-cloud level. In terms of actual combat experience, he was much stronger than before. He had already begun to use his Zodiac sheep ability in battle. Although most of them were support skills, sometimes it was the support skills that could determine the outcome of the whole battle. Chiyu closed his eyes and condensed his spiritual power in a certain direction. His huge spiritual power quickly connected to the place he wanted to contact. After doing this, he also sat cross-legged on the ground and began to cultivate. He wasn't doing this because he had consumed too much energy, but because he wanted to make use of this short period of time to cultivate better. Although his strength could not be greatly improved in a short period of time, as the saying goes, a little makes a mickle. Chiyu had already developed this good habit of cultivating at all times. Moreover, there were still many things waiting for him to do today, and his own energy was the key to support himself. When everyone had just rested for about half an hour, the Zodiac Guardian Warriors suddenly opened their eyes at the same time. Ryue and Su Dong floated up from the ground almost at the same time. After completing their origin mutation in an instant, they spread their wings and floated up into the sky. The other Zodiac Guardian Warriors gathered together in a fan shape, each raising their own thundercloud force, as if they were waiting for something. The fan shape they formed just happened to protect the members of the Zodiac Guardian teams, so that they would not be affected when they encountered danger. Ryu, who was in the sky, let out a loud dragon roar, as if she was provoking something. The Zodiac Guardian God Warriors below almost completed the origin mutation at the same time. After a month of training, all the Zodiac Guardian God Warriors could at least complete the first stage of origin mutation. In other words, everyone's strength had increased to the 3 clouds. It could be seen how great the change was for them in the past month. Chiyu was the last to stand up from the ground and calmly said, "Everyone, stop fighting. It's not an enemy." The surrounding Zodiac Guardian Warriors couldn't help but be stunned, because they all felt that the approaching aura was very familiar. Why did Chiyu say that it was not an enemy? Although Chiyu's voice was very soft, it clearly reached everyone's ears. In the sky, Su Dong was still hesitating, but Ryue had already floated down and landed beside Chiyu. At this moment, 2 dragon roars simultaneously rang out from the distance. One was black and the other was white. 2 enormous figures were rapidly approaching from the distance. It was the twin black and white dragons that had ambushed the 12 Zodiac teams countless times over the past month. A faint smile appeared in Chiyu's eyes as he said, "Now I can tell everyone that they are not our enemies, but training partners that have been accompanying you all this time." Apart from Ryue and Snow Girl, the rest of the Zodiac Guardian Warriors couldn't help but feel shocked. They looked at Chiyu, then looked at the black and white twin dragons that were rapidly approaching them, and for a moment, they didn't know what to say. Chiyu smiled faintly and said, "What? You don't believe me? Don't you think that for the past month, although they have been harassing you all, but in the battles with them, who among you has suffered any real harm? Perhaps now they are no longer able to do anything to you, but what about at the beginning of the month? Do any of you have the confidence to deal with their attacks? You must know that at that time, the cooperation between you all was too poor. On the first day, if they hadn't retreated, I'm afraid that your team of more than 100 members would have been completely annihilated. At this moment, the Zodiac Guardian warriors gradually understood. Looking at the enigmatic smile on Chi Yu's face, they couldn't help but smile wryly at each other. It turned out that all of this was planned by Chi Yu. No wonder he always had a card up his sleeve. It turned out that these two powerful ominous beasts were actually his doing. Yan Xiaoi cried out involuntarily, "Heavens! Boss, how did you do it? How could you find such powerful sparring partners?" Chi Yu smiled faintly and said, "Have you forgotten? Before you came, I had already come to this era. Do you think that I spent that time in vain? Black Dragon and White Dragon are both my friends and my companions. They once saved my life, and they are already here." At this time, the huge bodies of the Black and White Dragons had already appeared in everyone's line of sight. The members of the 12 Zodiac teams, who were previously in the middle of cultivating, also felt the aura of the Black and White Dragons due to the close distance. One by one, they immediately jumped up from the ground and emitted their own energy as they stared at the Black and White Dragons. Under the leadership of the 12 Zodiac Guardian warriors, they were no longer afraid of the Black and White Dragons. Chi Yu repeated what he had said to the 12 Zodiac Guardian warriors to the 12 Zodiac teams, and then walked straight towards the Black and White Dragons. Black Dragon lowered his head, and when Chi Yu walked in front of him, he couldn't help but rub his body a few times. Chi Yu patted Black Dragon's head and said with a smile, "Big brother, you've really worked hard these past few days." Black Dragon chuckled, and under everyone's shocked gazes he said, "It's not hard at all. If I could continue working hard like this, I'd be looking forward to it." For the past month, fighting with the 12 Zodiac teams had also helped him gain combat experience. Moreover, every day, Chi Yu used his own energy to support him and White Dragon in harassing the 12 Zodiac teams. Imperceptibly, Chi Yu's energy had a certain effect on their bodies, causing the strength of the Black and White Dragons to improve significantly. Compared to when they usually cultivated alone, they were many times stronger. Smiling faintly, Chi Yu's eyes revealed a gentle light. "I'm afraid there won't be such an opportunity in the future. For the rest of the journey, I'll have to rely on you two to lead the way." Black Dragon said, "No problem, we're here." Chi Yu turned to the 12 Zodiac teams and said indifferently, "If anyone is dissatisfied with the Black and White Dragon's attack on you, wait until the end of this training. Alright, let's move on. If anyone's physical strength can't hold on, let me know immediately. Don't force yourself. Try to maintain your body heat as much as possible. There's still a long way to go." Who would be dissatisfied? When they first found out that the Black and White Dragons were Chi Yu's friends, they might have been a little dissatisfied. However, when they thought about it carefully, throughout the training, it was indeed as Chi Yu had said. Although the Black and White Dragons had pushed them to the brink of death time and time again, they had never really hurt them. Just as Chi Yu said, the Black and White Dragons were actually their sparring partners. Where else could he find such a good sparring partner? Moreover, even if they were dissatisfied, who would dare to bring it up to Chi Yu? In the hearts of every member of the 12 Zodiac teams, Chi Yu had become even more unfathomable. More than 100 people continued on their journey. This time, their speed was a little faster than before. With the Black and White Dragons leading the way, no one dared to relax. Even though exhaustion was constantly attacking their bodies, they gritted their teeth and endured it. A month of training. A month of training had long nurtured their persevering character. When the sun gradually set in the west and the moon rose quietly, the 12 Zodiac teams had already been climbing the Kunlun Mountains for a whole day. They had only rested 3 times, and each time they rested for less than an hour. During this time, they had eaten fruits to appease their hunger. When they were thirsty, they would randomly pick up some ice and snow from the ground and stuff it into their mouth. When they were tired, they would use the needles they carried with them to prick the thickest parts of their bodies. Until now, although everyone felt dehydrated, no one had brought it up to Chiyu. That was until this afternoon, when they had been climbing mountains that were more than 6,000 meters above sea level. Altitude sickness alone was not something that ordinary people could withstand. Guan Ping quickened his footsteps and flew to Chiyu's side. In a low voice, he said, "Boss, I'm afraid that the other teams won't be able to hold on much longer. Under such cold weather and high-altitude conditions, I'm afraid that pulmonary edema will appear if we continue. It's no longer suitable for us to continue on our journey. The sky is already dark. Should we find a place to temporarily set up camp and have little treat everyone, or perhaps use your nature energy? Only then will there be no repercussions." Chiyu glanced at the vast and boundless snow-capped mountains in front of them. He nodded gently and said, "The fact that they have been able to hold on until now has greatly exceeded my expectations. However, we are about to reach our destination. Let them hold on for a while longer. You keep a close eye on them. If anyone's body can't hold on any longer, put him on the back of the black dragons and let them carry him forward." Guan Ping nodded and said, "All right then, I'll head back to the team first." After continuing on for an hour, the members of the 12 Zodiac squads, with the exception of the captains, were all in varying degrees of crisis. Some of them had already fallen into a deep sleep. It was at this time that Chiyu finally gave the order to stop. Chiyu floated up and landed on the head of the black dragon. He asked, "Have we arrived?" The black dragon replied, "It's here. Let them get ready." Chiyu nodded and jumped down from the black dragon's head. He summoned all the Zodiac guardian warriors in front of him and said, "Ryue, you stay here. Everyone else, follow me down. 10 minutes after we go down, Ryue will have all the members jump down into the cave at the speed of 1 person per minute. Stick close to the cave wall and slide down. We will be waiting for you down there. Once you're down there, everyone must raise their strength as much as possible to avoid being attacked by the cold. Let's go." The black dragon was the first to move, followed by the white dragon. They turned around and suddenly drilled into the ice and snow. As if they didn't encounter any obstacles, the black dragon's huge body disappeared first. A huge black hole appeared on the ground, followed by the white dragon. Chiyu called out to the Zodiac guardian warriors and directly jumped down into the cave like a slide. There was a faint smile on his face as he clasped his hands in front of his chest. They had finally arrived at their destination. He could finally breathe a sigh of relief. The figures of the Zodiac guardian god warriors disappeared one by one, but Ryue did not dare to be negligent. She activated her dragon power and spread it out. She used her dragon wings to spread the energy into the bodies of every member of the Zodiac guardian god squad. Of course, this was not an attack. She was just using her energy to help the members of the squad recover as much as possible so that they would not collapse from the high altitude and cold. Although the Zodiac guardian warriors had some doubts in their hearts, when they entered the ice cave, they had a strange feeling. Each of them had their own ability. After entering the ice cave, they released their own energy, bringing with them a faint light. The entire cave was completely made of ice. In that icy world, different colors of light shone. Chapter 225. Zodiac Squad, listen to my command. No one is allowed to attack. Immediately lock onto the great golden-winged eagle in the sky. In groups of 10, when I say start, immediately chant the following incantations and do the same action. Start the next round every 10 seconds. Do not lock onto the same great golden-winged eagle. The Zodiac Guardian Warriors do not need to chant. Get ready. The members of the Zodiac Squad were surprised as to why Chiyu did not allow them to fight, but no one dared to disobey Chiyu's orders. Some of them even wondered if the 200 birds in the sky were also sent by their boss to assist in the training. A faint light flashed in Chiyu's eyes. Although he could not see, his spiritual power was firmly locked onto the great golden-winged eagle that was flying at the front. A faint light flashed in his eyes as he chanted loudly, Lin Bing Do Zhe All Formation Advance. The name of the divine decree, the heavens are clear, the gods are pure, the gods are pure, the gods are not tainted, the ghosts and demons are subdued, the yin and yang are united, descend. The silver and black ink Kirin pattern actually emerged from his body. Chi Yu's eyes. At this moment, they would definitely turn silver. Her black hair stood on end, and an equally terrifying aura emanated from her body. The Kirin pattern continued to expand, and in the blink of an eye, it had already transformed into a 30-meter-long lichine. Kirin lowered his head, and the horn on his head shone with a resplendent silver and black light. At this moment, Chi Yu also raised his right arm. One by one, silver symbols emerged from the tip of Chi Yu's right finger. The same runes were also emanating from the horn of the black Qilin silhouette. The same silver symbols merged in midair, forming a circle that spread in all directions. It went straight for the great golden-winged eagle that was flying at the front. All the members of the Zodiac squad followed Chi Yu's lead and chanted the same incantation. Although there was no huge Kirin's shadow to support their bodies, under the influence of the huge energy, their bodies still showed certain changes. No matter what their original attributes were, at this moment, their bodies were covered in silver light. There were 10 people in a group, and rows of silver light floated out, enveloping the great golden-winged eagle legion in the sky. The 20,000-year golden-winged eagle flying at the very front didn't even have the chance to dodge before it was enveloped by Chi Yu's amplifying energy in a panic. When she sensed the aura contained within the silver light, she already understood. At this moment, the skill Chi Yu had bestowed upon himself was one of the most feared skills of the divine beast king, Kirin's descent. It was indeed Kirin's descent, and there was more than one Kirin's descent. When the leading golden-winged eagle disappeared into the silver light released by Chi Yu, then the number of golden-winged eagles was in units of 10. They quickly disappeared under the shroud of the silver light. In just a few breaths' time, before the golden-winged eagle legion reached the top of the 12 Zodiac squad, 121 of them had already disappeared without a sound. At this moment, the remaining golden-winged eagles were completely confused. They didn't expect that before they even launched an attack, more than half of the golden-winged eagles, including their leader, had been lost. This was a fact that they couldn't accept. They couldn't possibly understand what was going on. After all, there weren't even hundreds of Kirin in the entire ancient beast era. However, the aura that they had just sensed was that of Kirin's descent. What kind of concept was it for more than 100 people to use Kirin's descent at the same time? Although most of the golden-winged eagles that were captured had cultivated for 3,000 to 6,000 years. However, this was already the main fighting force of the entire golden-winged eagle family. Without much hesitation, the remaining golden-winged great rocks fled in all directions without a second thought. They didn't even want to fight. Right now, all they wanted was to find the great rock Wisdom King as soon as possible and report what had happened here to him. Chi Yu raised her hand to stop the people who wanted to chase after them. She couldn't help but laugh. Since the huge blow she had experienced in the suburbs of London, this was the first time she had laughed so happily. That's right. More than 100 golden-winged eagles were captured. Under the effect of Kirin's descent, they could also take care of the 12 Zodiac squad under her. This result was simply too perfect. What could be better than this? The 12 Zodiac squad was already strong enough. With the addition of a first-class golden-winged eagle as a flying mount, it was simply too perfect. When she brought everyone back to the present, whether it was Greece or Leg, what could they use to fight against her powerful subordinates? After obtaining this batch of golden-winged eagles, the overall strength of the 12 Zodiac squad had increased by several times. However, in her excitement, Chi Yu didn't forget herself. Although she had used Kiran's descent to temporarily restrain the golden-winged eagles, it wasn't over yet. After all, although everyone's strength had increased a lot during the month of training, compared to the golden-winged eagles, there was still a big gap between the ordinary members of the 12 Zodiac squad. It wasn't easy to truly make these golden-winged eagles serve them. Therefore, she didn't let everyone chase after the remaining golden-winged eagles. She had painstakingly cultivated the 12 Zodiac squad, and had just seen some result. She didn't want any losses. Chi-Yu wasn't worried about the golden-winged eagle in her body. Given her strength, although she might not be able to completely defeat it, she was no longer the Chi-Yu of the past. Although Xuanyuan's soul was currently in a deep sleep, the Xianyuan divine sword had fused with her. Her body was filled with the sharp aura of the Xianyuan divine sword. Perhaps she couldn't use this sharp aura completely in battle yet. However, as long as it was in her body, even the golden-winged eagle, whose strength was close to Liang Wanyan's, couldn't escape. After all, it was absolutely impossible to fight against the combined strength of the Xianyuan divine sword and Chi-Yu without the strength of a humanoid golden-winged eagle. There was another reason why Chi-Yu didn't worry about the golden-winged eagle in her body. If the emissary wanted to struggle out of her body, it would have to kill her. If she died, then the Bull Demon King, who had lived and died together with her, would also die. After returning from London, Chi-Yu had already learned of the situation from Snow Girl. If it wasn't for the Bull Demon King, who could make Snow Girl and Wen Ting teleport from the east to the west in an instant, only she could have such a huge, evil aura. Although she secretly hated the Bull Demon King for not helping her and instead sending Wen Ting and Snow Girl over, causing Wen Ting to die in order to save her, the Bull Demon King was there. If the golden-winged eagle wanted to destroy her, she didn't have to do it herself. The Bull Demon King wouldn't allow it to do so. Everyone, listen up. Immediately sit down cross-legged and raise your energy to the limit. At most, if one of you disappears, the golden-winged great ping eagle you just absorbed into your body will begin to devour you. If you can't resist the bite, then you will die immediately. But don't worry, you just need to raise your energy to the limit. Get rid of the distracting thoughts in your heart and leave the rest to us. Obeying orders had become the most basic mission of the 12 squads. After listening to Chi-Yu's words, everyone immediately sat cross-legged on the ground. Therefore, at this moment there were already 4 replicas, each with 30 people. The Shun family's phalanx emitted a cyan light, the Su family's phalanx emitted a red light, the Zhou family's phalanx and the Luo family's phalanx emitted a pale gold and blue light respectively. The 4 different types of energy suddenly became stronger. Chi-Yu summoned the Zodiac Guardian warriors to his side. He stood calmly in the middle of everyone and waved his right hand. A dark red light suddenly took away all the light, and endless power descended, enveloping everyone present. It was the Thousand Changes Jade Rock Realm technique that had been repaired by his source of nature. It was the first time for most of the Zodiac Guardian warriors to see Chi-Yu use this magical realm. It was as if they were in a deep space. For a moment, everyone quieted down and looked at Chi-Yu in the middle. The white hair on Chi-Yu's head turned silver, and a faint light flickered. The aura of Kiran's origin was released again. Chi-Yu thought carefully. He didn't have much time. If he disappeared, it was obviously impossible for him to help the 120 members subdue the golden-winged eagle. At this moment, Chi-Yu felt that he was a little impulsive. But it was not her fault. Previously in the frozen spring, he chose to use Kiran's assimilation to release his Kiran God's descent on everyone. His purpose was to strengthen everyone's strength by subduing the fierce beasts. Suddenly, the immense pressure roused him from his cultivation. In that instant, he had actually discovered the existence of the gold-winged great ping eagle. Chi-Yu immediately thought of the feasibility of his plan. In that instant, he did not have the time to think too much. In his excitement, he immediately made a decision to have everyone follow him to capture the gold-winged great ping eagle. Chi-Yu knew a fierce beast like the golden-winged eagle very well. As a first-class fierce beast, the golden-winged eagle not only had extremely strong attack power, but it also had the strongest flying ability among all the ancient giant beasts. The ability to soar 90,000 miles was no joke. As long as there was enough energy, even a modern plane would find it difficult to compete with the golden-winged eagle at full speed. With so many golden-winged eagles cooperating with his Zodiac squad. Then, after returning to the modern day, as long as he was willing, the Zodiac squad could appear in almost any corner of the world within a day. At the same time, they would also have the strongest flexibility. Coupled with the golden-winged eagle's powerful ability to assist the members of the Zodiac squad, it could be said that there were many advantages and no disadvantages. However, Chi-Yu was now at the end of his life. Although the golden-winged eagle was good, it was a little too good. At the same time, when there was not enough power to subdue them, the backlash from the golden-winged eagle was also proportional to their strength. Therefore, Chi-Yu was now a little regretful. However, it was too late for regret. There was no medicine for regret in this world. Since things had already come to this, she could only think of a way to save them. After all, as long as the golden-winged eagle woke up from the influence of Kiran's divine descent, then, in order to regain their freedom, they would not have a second choice. After thinking about it carefully, Chi-Yu already had a plan in mind. Although it could not solve the problem completely, it was the best way now. As long as they could delay the situation, there was a lot of room to change the situation. There was a skill in the Jade Rock realm that Chi-Yu had not used before, and that was the seal. Although this was not a sealing-type domain, and its sealing power was not strong, it was only relatively speaking. In the face of an opponent of the same strength or even higher strength, the Jade Rock realm seal of 1,000 possibilities was clearly useless. However, when facing opponents who were weaker than him, the situation became different. After thinking about it carefully, Chi-Yu regained his confidence and said in a deep voice, "Now, you guys help me. Although we have not practiced it, for the sake of the Zodiac squad, we have no choice but to use the real strength of the 12 Zodiac provinces." Ryua looked at Chi-Yu in surprise. In the past few days of cultivation, she had heard Chi-Yu talk about this cultivation method. Now that Chi-Yu mentioned it, she could not help but be shocked. After all, although everyone's strength had increased to above the 5-cloud level, it was still not easy to use that ability. "Chi-Yu, can we do it?" Ryua asked worriedly. She was not afraid of what would happen to the members of the Zodiac team if they failed, but she was afraid that Chi-Yu's body would be affected if he failed to use that ability. After all, as the leader, Chi-Yu would have to bear a lot of pressure. Chi-Yu said, "It shouldn't be a problem. We don't need to use all our energy. Each of you can release 50% of your energy. That way, although we don't have any energy coordination yet, with the strength of my mental power and your support, we should be able to succeed. Time is tight, let's start. You have to listen to my orders, and at the same time, please remember everything we have done today. This will also be our last resort in the future when we encounter a huge crisis." When the Zodiac warriors heard what Chi-Yu said, they immediately became nervous. 24 pairs of eyes were completely focused on him, quietly waiting for his orders. Chi-Yu concealed his aura and used his mental power to tell Jida, Snow Girl, Shangbing, and the Plant Soul to temporarily retreat. Just now, Chi-Yu did not ask them to tame the great golden-winged eagle, because each of them had different abilities. To them, taming the great golden-winged eagle might not be the best choice. "Next, I will lead you to use the most powerful ability of the Zodiac warriors, which is also a domain. In the west, Goddess Athena and her 12 Zodiac guardians had a powerful the signs of the Zodiac domain. As the Zodiac guardians of the east, we also have our own domain. When the Zodiac warriors have gathered, and everyone's power has reached the level of 5 clouds, this domain can be used. This is also the strongest ability that Master Zaglu imparted to me before he left. When I first met Master Zaglu, he told me that Qilin is the most important member of the Zodiac Guardian God Warriors. Although I'm different from ordinary Qilins, I'll be playing a supporting role in this domain that we're about to display. After the domain is formed, all of you will have to give up control of your own comprehension and let me direct the power of the domain. With the amplification of this domain, I think we can at least temporarily seal the golden rocks in the bodies of our team members. Vol asked curiously, Boss, what is this domain? Does it need all of us to use it together? Chi-Yu nodded and said, Yes, this is the common domain of the Zodiac Guardians. It is called the Zodiac Guardian Domain. Although the name is a bit ordinary, it is the only domain that can fully exert the power of the Zodiac Warriors. Alright, you will understand the situation of this domain later. What we need to do now is to first seal the great golden-winged eagle. Next, whenever I call a Zodiac Warrior, please activate the origin energy of your Zodiac and concentrate it 1 meter above my head. You must be completely calm, without any distracting thoughts. Everything else will be under my control. Let's begin, Zishu. Vol was stunned at first, but then he immediately began to move according to Chi-Yu's instructions. He had complete trust in his boss. A gray energy light appeared on Vol's body. His body suddenly shrank a bit, and then a layer of gray hair spread out from all over his body, especially his hair. After a while, the gray hair had completely covered his body. Inside the hair, Vol curled up his body, looking like a big fat mouse. At this time, only Vol's hands were still exposed outside his body. His hands were deformed. The original fleshy hands had become slender at this time, and each finger had a 5-inch nail. The nails were the same gray as the hair on his body. If one didn't look carefully, it would be difficult to notice that Vol's hands were moving with a psychedelic light. His hands were moving so fast that even Ru Yu felt that her eyes were a little dazzled. That's right, in order to activate the power of the origin in his body, Vol had already displayed the first stage of his attribute mutation. Dexterous hands, heavy body, these were the characteristics of the Rat Zodiac Warrior. Gray energy spread out from his hands, forming a vortex-like energy that shot toward the top of Chi-Yu's head. Chi-Yu waved his right hand, and a silver light burst out from his palm. The light was like the sun, shining brightly in the 4 stars boundary law. His right hand didn't stop, but kept waving in the air, bringing up silver threads. Then, a huge word appeared, fusing with the energy released by Vol. The word formed by the silver threads actually flew to Vol's body along with the energy released by Vol. A circular silver light shadow appeared under Vol's feet, and on the surface, this circular light shadow seemed to be connected to Chi-Yu through the energy released by Vol. Ugly bull! Chi-Yu shouted. Mo Dan did the same thing as Vol. Not much hair grew on her body, but the pair of horns on her head was particularly obvious. At the same time, her body shrunk a little under the effect of the attribute mutation. If someone attacked her body now, they would immediately find that her skin had become much tougher than cowhide. Mo Dan's eyes also turned blood red at this time, and 2 yellow lights emitted from her horns, converged between them, and shot toward the top of Chi-Yu's head. A huge word, ugly, appeared, connected with Mo Dan's energy, and the situation on Vol also appeared on her body at this time. Chi-Yu called out the attributes of the 12 Zodiac Guardian Warriors one after another, and rays of silver light completely connected the Zodiac Guardian Warriors around him to the top of his head. At this time, above Chi-Yu's head, the 12 energies of different colors and auras were fluctuating violently. They didn't restrain each other, but they also didn't complement each other, as if they were in a strange state. With a smile, the light in Chi-Yu's eyes suddenly became strong. His movements were very fast, and although his eyes couldn't see, his spiritual power had been raised to the limit, and he could even clearly sense the emotions of the Zodiac Guardian Warriors. In the world, there are 12 earthly branches, and the Zodiac Guardian Warriors are named after the earthly branches. In the name of Kirin, summon the eternal power of the world, and show the true power of the Zodiac Guardian Warriors. Chiyu's body changed. At this moment, his long silver hair burst forth with an enormous ball of light. His body suddenly disappeared in a ball of intense silver light, and the 12 silver threads connecting the 12 Zodiac Guardian God Warriors actually became as thick as water bucket. The enormous silver light instantly spread out and engulfed their bodies. A deep voice came from the strong silver light. The rat is called Toothless, the ox is called Transport Grain, the tiger is called Mountain King, the rabbit is called Mashing Medicine, the dragon is called Chief of the Four Spirits, the snake is called Deer-Eating God, the horse is called Tiger's Wife, the sheep is called Cheering Stone, the rooster is called Sea Chin, the monkey is called Offering Fruit, the dog is called Welcoming Guest, and the pig is called Black Face. The 12 Zodiac Guardians awaken in the name of protection. A huge silver ring appeared outside the 12 Zodiac Guardian Warriors. At this moment, with Chi-Yu as the center, and the 12 Zodiac Guardian Warriors as the foundation, a huge circular formation was formed. A loud and clear cry sounded from the center of the silver circular formation, and the silver light from the center gradually condensed. When the silver light condensed into a point, it was incomparably majestic. A huge ink Kirin filled with a tyrannical aura appeared in the center. At this time, the ink Kirin was completely different from the shadow that Chi-Yu had conjured in the past. This was the real Kirin. He raised his proud head and released his tyrannical aura. Black scales covered his entire body, and silver fur made him look very noble. The 4 colors of the thundercloud force, purple, blue, red, and cyan, appeared under his 4 limbs, especially his huge head. Kirin's horn, which seemed to be able to pierce through the heavens and earth, released a dazzling brilliance amidst the intertwining black and silver. Just like the silver light that had been released from the formation earlier, the silver light in the center of the formation had disappeared, and the silver light that connected the 12 surrounding spots had also dimmed. At the position of Zishu, a huge rat had appeared. Its body seemed to be about a meter in diameter, and its pair of small, dark red eyes flickered with a strange light. Beside it, a big greenish-yellow cow stood there. This cow looked a little strange. It actually had 3 horns, and the 2 big horns on its head were a little unusual, even somewhat disproportionate to its body. The third was a huge white tiger with black and white stripes on its body. On its forehead there was the word King, which emitted a tyrannical aura of a king. On its back was a pair of tiger wings, which added a bit of a mighty aura to it. Just like the previous 3, all the Zodiac Guardian Warriors had completely transformed into the Zodiac they belonged to under the urging of Chi-Yu's strange incantation. However, compared to the traditional Zodiac, most of them had some mutations. The 4 auspicious clouds, Ink Kirin commanded the 12 Zodiac Guardian Warriors. The energy aura they released was not strong, but it was impossible to sense any energy changes between them from the outside. The feet of the 12 Zodiac Guardian Warriors lit up, and the 12 Zodiac symbols that represented them appeared. A faint light flickered, and the entire silver ring suddenly released 12 silver pillars of light that shot into the sky. Ink Kirin let out a loud cry again. He stood in the middle of the formation, and the 12 silver pillars of light had completely covered Ink Kirin's body. The shadows of the 12 Zodiac Guardian Warriors rose from the silver light, and in the next moment, everything became silent. A circle of silver light was emitted from the center of the formation, and then the 12 Zodiac Guardian Warriors disappeared. The silver ring turned into a silver mirror, but the 12 Zodiac Guardian Warriors were engraved with silver energy threads. Ink Kirin stood in the middle of the mirror, and suddenly raised his forelimbs. Then, the horn on his head released a black and silver rotating energy that rose into the air. The silver mirror formed by the 12 Zodiac Guardian Warriors disappeared, and Ink Kirin, who was in the center, seemed to be trembling. The air around his body also became a little distorted. It was impossible to feel the huge pressure unless one was really in the 12 Zodiac Guardian realm. It was also the first time that Qi Yu led the 12 Zodiac Guardian warriors to use this realm. When he spread out the energy of the realm, he immediately realized that something was wrong. Although the 12 Zodiac Guardian warriors only released 50% of their energy, it was impossible for him to use all of it with his mental strength. The method of using the realm that Master Zagru taught him did not seem to be very useful. At this moment, his body was under the huge pressure brought by the 12 Zodiac Guardian warriors. His figure flickered, and the light in Qi Yu's eyes became stronger and stronger. His silver eyes had regained their vision. Although transforming into ink Kirin had filled him with power, his heart was at a loss at this moment. 12 earthly branches, the 12 Zodiac Guardian realm. How could he unleash the true power of this realm? Qi Yu suddenly felt that the huge pressure that he was under was similar to the pressure that the Bull Demon King had given him. In other words, when they used the 12 Zodiac Guardian realm, the energy that merged with Kirin as the center was comparable to the Bull Demon King's. What kind of powerful energy was that? It was simply terrifying. His mental strength had been activated to the maximum. Qi Yu racked his brains to think. Zagru had told him very clearly that when he used this realm and chanted the incantation, he needed to release his mental strength and resonate with the energy of the 12 Zodiac Guardian warriors through the source of Kirin's energy. Through the changes in the incantation, the 12 Zodiac Guardian warriors would become a whole realm with him as the center. In this realm, every Zodiac Guardian warrior would become a fighting weapon. No matter how strong or weak Kirin was, as long as the Zodiac Guardian warrior's strength reached 5 clouds, Kirin would be able to use the ability of any Zodiac Guardian warrior through his auxiliary ability, and this ability would be more than 10 times the strength of the Zodiac Guardian warrior. This was all Zagru knew, but he was not very clear about how to release it. He could only let Qi Yu and the others figure it out themselves. In the end, Zagru told Qi Yu that if he wanted to truly expand the power of this realm to the maximum, he must rely on his wisdom to comprehend it. If it was just a battle, perhaps Qi Yu could use this realm no matter what. However, what he wanted now was not a battle form, but to use the 12 Zodiac Guardian realm to inject a huge amount of energy into his 1000 transformation of Jade Pearl boundary technique and seal the positions of the Zodiac squad members present. This greatly increased the difficulty. It was the first time for Pet Su to use this realm, so he couldn't help but feel a little confused. After all, Qi Yu was Qi Yu. After thinking for a short while, he carefully recalled every word that Master Zagru said. Chapter 226. A silver light flashed, and the silver disc changed again. After Qi Yu instantly understood, the 12 Zodiac Guardian domain was finally activated. The huge ink Kirin disappeared, and his carving appeared in the center of the disc. At the same time, his carving was the only part of the disc that was not silver, and it showed the appearance of ink Kirin himself. The disc rotated and rose into the air. Then, the disc began to change. As it rotated in mid-air, it began to shrink. From its original diameter of more than 20 meters, it had shrunk to 1 meter in diameter almost by the time the arc formed by the disc was completed. The disc floated parallel to the art of 1000 changes. With a flash of light, the shrunken images of the 12 zodiacs and ink Kirin on the ring lit up at the same time. A beam of mixed colors floated up and reached a height of about 3 meters. Then, a tall figure appeared in the center of the disc. It was Qi Yu, but the current Qi Yu was completely different. He was standing on the 12 zodiac disc that had shrunk to 1 meter in diameter, and the aura of Kirin on his body had disappeared. As the controller and initiator of the 12 zodiac guardian domain, there were many forms of this domain. Right now, Qi Yu was only using the simplest and most direct form, which was energy assistance. Due to the special nature of this domain, the object of assistance could only be any one of the 12 zodiac warriors, but not Kirin, who was the core. Hence, when Chi Yu's body appeared once again, the Jade Pearl Realm technique of 1,000 possibilities had disappeared into thin air. Instead, a silver ring of light was emitted from the disk beneath his feet, replacing the Jade Pearl Realm technique and enveloping the 12 Zodiac teams below. At this time, Chi Yu's body was completely wrapped in a layer of silver mist. Jida and the others, who were watching from afar, could not sense his current energy state. It was the first time they had seen 13 people fused into one person. Chi Yu's shoulders shook slightly, and his body instantly retreated about 1 meter. At the same time, a tall and straight figure suddenly appeared in front of him. The figure that appeared looked shorter than Chi Yu, and his shoulders were not as broad as Chi Yu's, but his appearance was very special. A layer of long white hair hung from the top of his head to his back, which was different from Chi Yu's pale hair. His white hair was full of luster, and a pair of huge goat horns rose from the top of his head in a semi-spiral shape. The muscles on his body were tense, and although it was not exaggeratedly huge, at this moment, his whole body was wrapped in a layer of rich white energy. This white energy was like a belt of light that slowly circled below his head. At this time, Chi Yu's figure had appeared behind him, and the silver disc that was 1 meter in diameter had expanded by 2 meters, to bear the weight of 2 people. With a slight smile, Chi Yu's eyes revealed a faint cold light, and he used his spiritual power to completely communicate with Yan Xiaoyi in front of him. When Yan Xiaoyi appeared, even he himself was not used to it. He suddenly realized that his strength was actually many times stronger than before. Originally, when he reached the strength of 6 clouds, the results of the group training had already made him extremely satisfied. But now, his strength was far from being comparable to 6 clouds. The energy in his body was endless. Clear images kept flashing in his mind, and they seemed to be the true strength of the goat Zodiac warrior. A faint light flashed, and Chi Yu said in a deep voice, "The current Yu already has the strongest strength of the goat Zodiac warrior. Now, according to the instructions of my spiritual power, display the power of the seal." Among the 12 Zodiac Guardian warriors, the goat Zodiac warrior was the only one who mainly used support abilities. Therefore, in terms of energy sealing, his talent was far beyond that of the other Zodiac Guardian warriors. Under the effect of the 12 Zodiac Guardian domain, the current Yan Xiaoyi not only instantly rose to the highest realm that a Zodiac warrior could reach, 9 clouds, but at the same time, he was also supported by the energy of everyone in Chi Yu's domain. Simply put, the current strength of Yan Xiaoyi's energy was the highest level of the Zodiac Guardian warriors, 9 clouds. However, the energy that he could continuously display now, under the premise of the strength of 9 clouds, was as much as all the other Zodiac Guardian warriors combined. Under the effect of the same source of energy, his energy was even greater than all the other Zodiac Guardian warriors combined. Under the guidance of Chi Yu's spiritual power, Yan Xiaoyi quickly understood the situation in front of him. He slowly raised his hands, and the pair of goat horns on his head turned a transparent milky white under the effect of the goat Zodiac thundercloud force. Yan Xiaoyi had never felt that he could actually have such powerful energy. The feeling of being able to dominate everything was too wonderful for him. His hands unconsciously drew circles in front of him, and pure milky white light floated up from the circles he drew and fell on the members of the Zodiac Guardian team. Every circle required a lot of energy from the goat Zodiac warrior, but he was not alone now. He had the support of the other 11 Zodiac Guardian warriors and the 4 auspicious clouds, Ink Kirin. The milky white light was like a halo of life spreading from the sky. When the members of the Zodiac Guardian team were surrounded by the light, their originally excited faces immediately calmed down, and the gradually agitated energy in their bodies also gradually calmed down under the influence of the milky white light. The silver light flowed, and when the last white halo flew out from Yan Xiaoyi's hands, he instinctively closed his eyes and folded his arms in front of his chest. The silver light suddenly flashed, and in the blink of an eye, He was back in the silver plate at Chi-Yu's feet. Chi-Yu took a deep breath. This was the first time he used this realm, but he had already fully experienced the mysteries of this realm. What he had shown today was only a fraction of what it was. An average of 5 clouds was the foundation to use this realm, but in order to truly display the full power of this realm, he would need to have all 9 clouds. Although it seemed that this goal was still very far away, that did not mean that it would not succeed. The silver light suddenly flashed, and those who could see Chi-Yu instinctively closed their eyes because of the strong light. When the flashing light disappeared, Chi-Yu and the 12 Zodiac Guardian warriors had reappeared on the ground. Before Chi-Yu could say anything, Yan Xiaoi had already rushed to his side excitedly. "Boss, this is too awesome. This is too amazing. Just now, how did I suddenly have such great power? Heavens! Do you know, at that moment I felt as if I could feel the life energy of the entire world? Even if it was a dead person, I had some confidence that I could revive them. This is the true power of the Zodiac Guardian warriors. In the future, if anyone dares to say that I'm impotent, I'll beat them up." Chi-Yu smiled slightly and said, "This is the mystery of the Zodiac Guardian realm. Under the effect of the entire realm, through my auxiliary control, any one of you can instantly reach the 9th cloud level through the mutual energy generated by others. But at this time, the energy consumed is not your own, but everyone else's. This way, you will have enough power to display the strongest ability of your Zodiac Guardian warrior." That was the case just now. Otherwise, even if you had reached the 9th cloud level, you would not be able to use your own strength to display 120 seals. The amplification effect of this realm is extremely obvious. In the future, as long as we cultivate more, we will definitely be able to discover more secrets. Yan Xiaoi's excitement made the other Zodiac Guardian warriors extremely happy. After all, who did not wish to display the strength of the 9th cloud level? Moreover, there was also the amplification effect that Chi-Yu mentioned. When they fused with the realm, they all felt that their power seemed to have disappeared, but also seemed to have become incomparably huge. Although they could not truly control this strange feeling, they could clearly feel that after using this realm once, the aura between themselves and the other Zodiac Guardian warriors seemed to have become more harmonious than before. Everyone seemed to have a feeling of telepathy, and just the exchange of glances was enough to send out a signal of friendship. A faint light flashed in Chi-Yu's eyes. At this moment, his vision had already disappeared. However, Chi-Yu discovered that after these days of cultivation, coupled with the absorption of the frozen spring's energy, his energy seemed to have become more condensed than before, and his vision was no longer filled with darkness. Although he still could not see clearly, at least the white blur in front of him proved that he had regained his ability to sense light. Turning to the Zodiac team, Chi-Yu smiled and said, "All right, everyone is safe for now. With the seal that Yan Xiaoi just cast, the golden-winged eagle in your body will not be able to act up for at least 10 days. Perhaps everyone does not understand why I let you use Kirin's descent with me. In fact, the reason is very simple. When I first gave this ability to you through Kirin's assimilation, I had already thought about it. Although you have all improved very quickly, if you want to make a qualitative leap, relying on your own strength is still not enough. So, finding a giant beast as a companion is obviously a good choice. Although the golden-winged eagle may not be suitable for all of you, with its tyrannical flying ability, it is already a very good choice among the dire beasts. This time, even I did not expect so many golden-winged eagles to appear at the same time. However, since it has appeared, we must seize this opportunity. First, there is still a big gap between your individual strength and that of the golden-winged eagles, especially the golden-winged eagles that some people have subdued for more than 6,000 years. Once the effect of Kirin's descent wears off, their backlash will immediately take your lives. However, you do not need to worry. With the lunatic seal, in the next 10 days, we will help you solve this problem one by one. Of course, if you want to solve the root of the problem, you will still have to rely on your own strength. Only when your strength surpasses that of the golden-winged eagle will it never be able to struggle out of your body and become your giant beast companion. Now, everyone, pick up the pace. As we march, I will help each of you solve the problem. After listening to Chi Yu's words, the members of the 12 Zodiac squad were both happy and worried. They were happy that they would have a powerful mount or fighter, but they were worried that this powerful main force was like a ticking time bomb that could explode at any time. After all, this was not a perfect thing for them. As they continued to march, Chi Yu was not too worried. After all, a 9-cloud level goat Zodiac warrior was not something that the 3,000 to 6,000 years old golden-winged eagles could compare to. Given the seal that Little E had released at that time, a 10-day time limit was already very low. Now, the first thing that Chi Yu needed to do was to communicate with the golden-winged eagle that he had subdued and make it loyal to him. Sitting cross-legged on the back of the black dragon, Chi Yu hadn't even cultivated for 30 minutes when Ling Jiu, who had been subdued by Kirin, woke up. As soon as the giant golden-winged eagle with a wingspan of more than 15 meters woke up, its first reaction was to rush out of Chi Yu's body. However, it was easier said than done for it to regain its freedom now. Just as it was about to unleash its power, Ling Jiu immediately felt an incomparably sharp aura coming from every corner of his body. It was as if the moment he made any strange movements, he would immediately be torn to shreds by the sharp energy. Chi Yu's voice sounded in the golden-winged eagle's mind. "Are you awake? Don't try to struggle. Unless I want you to, you can only stay in my body forever and accompany me for a long time. With your nearly 20,000 years of cultivation, you should understand what it means to be Kirin's envoy. I don't need to say more, right? Bastard, let me out, or my father will not let you off." The golden-winged eagle's response was to put up a strong front. However, its voice clearly lacked confidence. When Chi Yu used Kirin's God's Descent, it clearly saw that Chi Yu was in human form. Even its father might not be able to defeat Kirin, who could transform into human form. Could it be that Kirin, who had turned it into an envoy, was actually the current king of the divine beasts? Other than him, it really couldn't think of anyone else who could do it. Chi Yu smiled and said, "Your father? If I'm not wrong with your strength, there are only a few golden-winged eagles who are stronger than you. Your father must be the ancestor of the golden-winged eagle, the great rock king, right?" "That's right," the golden-winged eagle said proudly. "The great rock king is my father. He commands the beasts and can tear you to pieces at any time." Chi Yu said, "Is that really the case?" Unfortunately, the Great Rock King is probably the only one who acknowledges the title of the King of the Beasts. Whether it is the Deep-Sea Hades Dragon King or the Chaos King, I'm afraid they are all waiting to see you make a fool of yourselves. The Great Rock King has lost so many of his subordinate. Don't talk about dealing with us. He is most worried about being swallowed by the other two beasts. Even if he wants to save you, how can he save you if he can't find you? You have already become my envoy. I just need to hide your aura, and you will never see the Great Rock King again." "You." The golden-winged eagle knew that everything Chi Yu said was true. Just as Chi Yu had said, in Kirin's body, as the envoy of Kirin, as long as Chi Yu wanted to, he could use Kirin's aura to completely restrict the golden-winged eagle's energy. And the sharp energy in Chi Yu's body was something that the golden-winged eagle could not resist at all. The golden-winged eagle was filled with discouragement. This was the difference in strength. Actually, he did not know that with Chi Yu's current strength, in a one-on-one situation, even if he used the Xianyuan sword, he was afraid that he would only be able to beat him by a little. How could a golden-winged eagle with close to 20,000 years of cultivation be ordinary? This golden-winged eagle that Chi Yu had captured would not take long to transform into a human. "What do you want? As a noble member of the golden-winged eagle race, don't even think of enslaving me." Chi Yu knew that the golden-winged eagle had already softened. He smiled and said, "How about this? Actually, I have no intention of enslaving you. After all, you have some strength. Since you are the son of the great Rock King, I will call you Little Pung from now on. You can be my companion. You should also know that although being my messenger limits your freedom, you can still be my companion. However, as an ancient giant beast, Kirin's aura is the favorite of all beasts and mythical beasts. If you cultivate in my body, it will definitely be twice the result with half the effort. Let's temporarily set the aura for 10 years. 10 years is just a snap of the fingers for you. As long as you are willing to help me wholeheartedly in these 10 years, I promise you that after 10 years, I will let you out, cancel the contract with the envoy, and restore your freedom. What do you think?" After listening to Chi Yu's words, Little Pung could not help but feel excited. Chi Yu was right. One of the aspects that the beasts were most envious of the mythical beasts was that Kirin, the king of the mythical beasts, could assist any of the mythical beasts in their cultivation. If the mythical beasts became Kirin's envoy, it would be a good thing for them. As long as Kirin did not die, then the mythical beasts that became the envoy would receive great benefits. Even if Kirin died, they would be able to regain their freedom. At this time, although he had lost his freedom, it would be much easier to transform into a human if he could cultivate in Kirin's body. Even those difficult checkpoints would be smooth sailing. 10 years was really nothing for his lifespan that was close to 20,000 years. However, there was only one problem in Little Peng's heart now. Would Chi Yu keep his promise and let him go after 10 years? At this moment, Chi Yu solemnly said, "In the name of Kirin, I swear here that I am willing to make a 10-year contract with Little Pung, the son of the great Pung Wisdom King. Within 10 years, as long as Little Pung helps me wholeheartedly, then today, 10 years later, I will return him to himself and free him from the envoy's body. If I violate this oath, let me suffer the pain of reincarnation." Chi Yu's words could be said to put Little Peng's heart at ease. After a slight hesitation, he said, "I can be your envoy, but I have another condition." Chi Yu secretly rejoiced in his heart. He knew that Little Pung had given up his dignity. After all, he was in his body. Even if he was unwilling to help him, it was impossible to let him out. Using 10 years of help in exchange for freedom could be considered very lucky for him. As the royal family of the mythological beasts, the Kirin clan could not go back on the oath they made. Of course, what Little Pung did not know was that Chi Yu, who could travel through time and space with the help of the Kunlun mirrors, had already experienced the feeling of reincarnation. It did not seem to be a big problem for him to reincarnate a few times. "What condition do you have?" Chi Yu said confidently. Little Pung said, "Although I have been forcefully accepted as an envoy by you, I am still a member of the great golden-winged eagle clan. So, if you face my clansmen in the future, I will definitely not help you." Chi Yu thought about it and said, "This is human nature. I agree. At the same time, I can even promise you that as long as your father does not threaten my life, even if we are enemies, I will not harm his life." "Really?" Little Pung said in surprise. Chi Yu said, "Even if I don't make an oath, I have never gone back on my words." Although the great Eagle King was one of the 3 great ferocious kings, it was not considered a threat to Chi Yu. He was not afraid of the great Eagle King at all. After all, after this training, they would be returning to the modern world. The great Eagle King could not possibly follow them. Giving such a favor to Little Pung would also make him more loyal to him. "All right, I am willing to help you and become your true envoy." Little Peng's voice was a little helpless, but it felt like he was in a good mood. This was the era of the ancient beasts after all. Although there were many ferocious beasts that had cultivated for more than 10,000 years. However, in this era of purity, the thoughts of these ferocious beasts and mythological beasts were still relatively simple even if they had cultivated for more than 10,000 years. If it was Chi Yu's era, living in an environment of mutual deception every day, not to mention 10,000 years. Even 100 years would be enough to train to become a human elite. With a smile, the light in Chi Yu's eyes became much gentler. You must want to know why so many Kirin's divine descent appeared just now, causing your great Eagle King Corps to lose a total of 100 dudes. I can answer your question. It's actually very simple. I used Kirin's assimilation ability to subdue Kirin's divine descent, the original Kirin skill, and gave it to them. Therefore, they accepted their envoys. Since you've decided to help me, can you get your clansmen to do the same? If that's the case, I can remove their seals. The little Pung thought about it and said, I'm afraid that will be very difficult. For us golden-winged great Pung eagles, freedom is absolutely important. I have no choice. Your strength is stronger than mine. Otherwise, I would also think of a way to get out. Although I haven't fought with you before, I can see that there are only 2 or 3 of you who can truly be called experts among you. Although your subordinates have some power, they are still lacking compared to my clansmen. I'm afraid that even my orders won't be able to make them obey them wholeheartedly. I can't help you with this. Chi Yu nodded and said, All right then. Since your people can't agree to my request, then I have to use some extreme measures. Little Pung was somewhat disdainful of Chi Yu's words. In his opinion, other than directly accepting Chi Yu as an envoy, even if Chi Yu was powerful, he was afraid that he would not help others to subdue his own people. However, this thought didn't last long. The whole army marched forward. Chi Yu summoned one of the 12 Zodiac team members to the back of the Black Dragon and ordered him to sit cross-legged in front of him. Then, Chi Yu began the process of assisting in the subduing process. Without the energy of the source of nature, Kirin's thundercloud force, and Kirin's origin power, little Pung in Chi Yu's body clearly saw through the images transmitted by Chi Yu's spiritual power. When Chi Yu's right hand slapped the Zodiac team member in front of him, a dazzling golden light suddenly erupted. The team member's body trembled violently, but he quickly recovered. However, the sudden appearance of the sharp Chi made the huge black dragon under Chi Yu involuntarily tremble. Little Pung finally understood what kind of power made it impossible for him to resist after becoming an envoy. He said in horror, Xianyuan sword, you are actually the successor of the Xianyuan sword. In that case, you are not the real Kirin. Chi Yu said proudly, Kirin's blood flows in my body. Who dares to say that I am not the real Kirin? Why, do you regret it now? Little Pung smiled bitterly and said, What's the use of regretting? With the suppression of the Xianyuan sword, unless you are willing, I really can't even resist. I accept my fate. To assist his companions in their cultivation, he used the energy of the source of nature. Facing the golden-winged eagle that wanted to resist, Chi Yu did not hesitate to choose the incomparably sharp Xianyuan sword. Xuanyuan's soul was still asleep. Chi Yu released his own energy through the aura of the Xianyuan sword. After entering the body of the Zodiac team member, it was like a virtual Xianyuan sword that stayed in the body of the Zodiac team member. It was just like the sword soul that Chi Yu encountered in Xuanyuan's tomb. As long as it was there, the golden-winged eagle in the body of the Zodiac team member could not resist. Of course, this sword soul formed by pure energy could only exist for about a month. In other words, every month, Chi Yu had to inject new Xianyuan sword energy into the body of the Zodiac team member to maintain their control over the golden-winged eagle. Although Chi Yu could not control the members of the Zodiac team, after the golden-winged eagle problem appeared, it could be said that he directly controlled the lives of his subordinates. This control could only be completed when the strength of his subordinates surpassed the golden-winged eagle. This time limit, just like what Chi Yu had said to Little Pung, was tentatively set at 10 years. Chi Yu told all the members of the Zodiac team that as long as he used the energy of the Xianyuan sword, they could try to awaken the golden-winged eagle in their body. Although it was still sealed, they could still communicate with each other through spiritual power. With the threat of the Xianyuan sword, The members of the Zodiac team could also propose a 10-year time limit like Chi-Yu. Regardless of whether it was man or beast, no one was willing to accept death. Therefore, as Chi-Yu and the others got closer to the headquarters of the earthly race, the number of golden-winged eagles that agreed to become envoys to help them also increased. Chi-Yu used the speed of releasing 20 sword souls every day to support them. It was not that he was not strong enough, after all, he had captured the son of the great Rock King. In order to guard against the revenge of the great Rock King, he had to maintain enough energy. After obtaining Little Peng, Chi-Yu no longer rode the black dragon. He released Little Peng, a golden-winged eagle with a wingspan of 15 meters. Even if Chi-Yu used all his strength, he could not fly as fast as Little Peng. After all, although Chi-Yu also knew the innate ability of the golden-winged eagle, there was still a gap between it and the real golden-winged eagle. Little Peng's back was very comfortable to sit on, even when flying at high speed, it was very stable. Moreover, Little Peng's body would automatically produce a layer of golden energy that enveloped Chi-Yu, and even the wind could not touch him. Every time Chi-Yu rode Little Peng and soared in the sky, he could not help but think of the private plane that Yamu had sent to the capital to pick him up. Compared to the Gulfstream 5, Little Peng was much better. At least, it did not need to be maintained. Moreover, its flying speed was far beyond that of the Gulfstream 5. Since Little Peng had voluntarily become an envoy of Chi-Yu, he did not want to see his father and Chi-Yu in conflict. After all, no matter which side was hurt, he could not bear it. Therefore, there was no need for Chi-Yu to do it. He himself concealed the aura of the golden-winged eagle, for fear that his father, the great Rock King, would find him. When Chi-Yu and his party finally arrived at the Alpine native tribe, 80% of the members of the Zodiac squad had already obtained the surrender of the golden-winged eagle in their bodies. What they needed now was to wait for the seal cast by Yen Xiaoi to be unlocked in 10 days. At that time, they would be able to have their own giant beast partner. Chapter 227. In the beginning, everyone didn't think much of it. But when Chi-Yu brought up Hu Guang's example, everyone gradually accepted it. Chi-Yu's example was very simple. Snakes and eagles were natural enemies. If Hu Guang were to get a golden-winged eagle as his messenger, not only would it not be of any help to his strength, it might even have the opposite effect. The Earth race's headquarters was the same as last time. As far as the eye could see, there was an endless number of wooden houses, forming a huge tribal system. The clear water of the Green River could be clearly seen from the sky, and it reflected a faint light and shadow under the illumination of the sun. If there was anything different from the last time Chi-Yu had been here, then it would be the defense of the entire tribe. The Earth race's headquarters was already very large, and now, it had doubled in size towards the plains. The wooden houses were all the same, but they looked much simpler. Large numbers of soldiers patrolled the entire tribe. From their different attire, it was obvious that they belonged to different human races. Little Peng was a vicious beast after all. In order to not cause panic among the 4 races, Chi-Yu scanned the mountain in the center of the Earth race's headquarters with his consciousness, then recalled Little Peng back into his body, and returned to the group. He told the black and white dragons to quietly enter the Green River from a place further away, while he led the group towards the 4 races' campsite. When the group was about a kilometer away from the 4 races' campsite, they were stopped by a group of soldiers. Because the 4 races had joined forces, patrolling was naturally done by the 4 races. At this time, there were about 100 soldiers in front of Chi-Yu's group. Every single one of them was holding a wooden spear. It was a stretch to call it a spear, because the manufacturing method of these spears was too simple. It was just a thick wooden stick. A sharp stone was tied to the top of the stick, forming the body of the spear. Even the thickness of the spear in each person's hand was different. This group of 100 people looked slightly different from the ancient humans that Chi-Yu had seen before. Their hair was reddish-brown, and they were slightly taller than the Moon race, White race, and Earth race. Their shoulders were very broad, and they looked very strong. There was a hint of wildness in his eyes, and it was obvious that he was a warmonger. A thought flashed through Chi-Yu's mind, and he thought of a possibility. Perhaps this team of 100 people in front of him was the Fire Clan that he had never met before. The leader of the group, who was especially tall, stepped forward and shouted at Chi-Yu and the others. The others couldn't understand what he was saying. Chi-Yu immediately translated with the ability of the origin of nature. Although the 4 races of human beings had their own characteristics, their languages were almost the same. He did not know whether to laugh or cry when he heard the words of the fire race in front of him, because he asked, "Which race are you refugees from?" Chi-Yu looked back at the members of the Earth race, Shao squad behind him. Indeed, it was no wonder that the 12 Zodiac teams asked this question. Except for some of the strong Zodiac Guardian God warriors, the current 12 Zodiac teams looked no different from refugees. The month-long training was extremely arduous. Even though everyone had brought a lot of clothes, the rate of consumption was extremely shocking. Now, most of the people were only wearing strips of clothing. The girls were better off. With the support of their companions from the same clan, they had a little more clothing on, barely covering their important parts. The male team members were much more miserable. Many of them were only left with a pair of underpants. Chi-Yu responded in standard Earth race language, "Yes, we are Earth race people. It's not easy for us to come back. Can you take us back to the tribe?" The leader of the fire race team looked at Chi-Yu from head to toe. Looking at Chi-Yu's strange black shirt and trousers and his white hair, he could not help but show a little vigilance in his eyes. He waved the spear in his hand, and the people of the fire race behind him suddenly moved, surrounding Chi-Yu and the Zodiac teams in the center. The leader of the fire race team took a few steps forward and came to the front of Chi-Yu. He put his spear forward and put it on Chi-Yu's shoulder. He shouted, "Let's go." Chi-Yu frowned slightly. How could Kiran's dignity be violated by these primitive humans? He raised his left hand and grabbed the tip of the spear. "We are not prisoners." He just slightly exerted his strength, and the spear in the hand of the leader of the fire race team fell into his hand. The leader of the fire race team suddenly became angry. He shouted in the language of the fire race. Suddenly, hundreds of fire race soldiers pressed forward and were about to fight. Chi-Yu shook his head helplessly. It seemed like he still could not go in the normal way. He raised his head, and his long white hair fluttered in the wind. Chi-Yu let out a loud and clear whistle. The whistle went straight to the 9 heavens, and the strong sound waves immediately caused the people of the fire race to look as if they were drunk. Their bodies swayed and they retreated. Some of them who were not strong enough even fell to the ground. As Chi-Yu let out a long whistle, not long after, a few figures in the distance had already rushed towards Chi-Yu from the sky. Before they arrived, their voices could already be heard. "Chi-Yu, my son, is that you?" The anxious voice was filled with strong emotions. It was Irua. "Mother, it's me." Chi-Yu smiled slightly. His body floated up and welcomed Irua in the sky. Chi-Yu couldn't see, but the familiar aura on Irua's body gave him a very intimate feeling. Especially Irua's heartfelt concern, it made Chi-Yu's heart warm. There were 2 other people with Irua. One was the black tortoise, and the other was the azure dragon. Irua grabbed Chi-Yu's shoulder and looked at Chi-Yu, whose appearance had changed greatly. She looked up and down excitedly. "Child, you are the hero who saved us mythological beasts. Mother has been waiting for you for too long." Chi-Yu smiled slightly and said, "Mother, don't say that. That was what I promised you. Since I promised, I will definitely do it. Moreover, your team has also helped me a lot. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have been able to get the recognition of the Xianyuan sword." Irua said a little reproachfully, "Emohua told me that you would be back within a month. Now you are late." Chi-Yu smiled bitterly and said, "I was delayed by some things. Mother, my companions are still down there." Should we go back to the headquarters of the Earth race first before we talk? Irua finally came to her senses. She hurriedly pulled Chiyu, the Azure Dragon, and the Black Tortoise down to the front of the 12 Zodiac team. At this moment, the 12 Zodiac guardian gods, Jida, Shangbing, and the plant soul were extremely shocked. Just now, they thought that they had heard wrongly. They had actually heard the word mother from Chiyu's mouth. They all knew that Chiyu was an orphan, especially when they saw how young and beautiful Irua looked on the surface. The feeling in their hearts became even stranger. Especially Jinue, she was a little confused. When she came to this era, Chiyu had just become her daughter. Now, a mother had appeared. Could she be? Everyone was sizing up Irua and the other two. Irua and the other two were also sizing them up. Especially the beauties standing in front, they instantly attracted Irua's attention. Every one of them had a strong energy aura. Irua couldn't help but nod in her heart. Coupled with their beautiful looks and special aura, she couldn't help but sigh in her heart. It seemed like her son was really capable. Being able to have so many beautiful women as his wives, as a member of the Divine Beast Kirin clan during the Ancient Beast era, Irua didn't think that it was abnormal for a Kirin to have so many partners. Chiyu smiled and said, "Mother, let me introduce them to you. These are the Zodiac Guardian God Warriors that I mentioned to you before. They are all my partners. The rest of them are members of my newly organized 12 Zodiac teams. Each team has 10 members. Brothers, this is the mother that I recognized during the Ancient Beast era. She is the High Priestess of the Two Clan, one of the 4 great human clans in this era. At the same time, she is also a Kirin clan's native Kirin. Mother's abilities are much stronger than mine. She is a 9-cloud super expert." After hearing Chiyu's introduction, the special thought in Ryue's heart immediately dissipated. She knew how many years Kirin needed to cultivate to the 9 clouds. This woman in front of her, whom Chiyu recognized as his mother, had at least a few hundred years of lifespan. They were both Kirin and shared the same bloodline. Furthermore, Chiyu was an orphan. It was no wonder that he would recognize her as his mother. After Irua greeted everyone, she, the Black Tortoise, and the Green Dragon brought everyone towards the allied camp of the 4 human clans. As they walked, Irua started to converse with Chiyu. Chiyu asked, "Mother, the Jili people have fully recovered, right? I heard from Elder Mo'Hua that the situation on your side doesn't seem to be very good." Irua laughed bitterly and said, "It's not as simple as not very good. The strong recovery of the Jili people has dealt a huge blow to the 4 human clans. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to see all 4 human clans here. You know about the Yu clan's headquarters being destroyed. Not long after that, the Jili people launched a fierce attack on the 4 human clans. Their numbers were much greater than I had imagined. If it wasn't for the Green Dragon, the Black Tortoise, and I supporting them here, I'm afraid the human army would have collapsed long ago. After all, in terms of combat power, the difference between normal humans and the Jili people is too great. Our weapons can't even break through the scales on their bodies. We can only rely on the heroes of the various clans who have huge beasts as companions to barely fight against them. In just a few short months, the number of humans has decreased by a third. If we can't change this situation, I'm afraid the entire human race will be in danger of being wiped out. Fortunately, you came back in time. I think that with your Xianyuan sword's call to arms, you will definitely be able to bring confidence to the humans. That way, we will have a higher chance of winning." Chiyu frowned and said, "Mother, to be honest, this time, I don't want to use the Xianyuan sword to help the 4 human clans." Irua was stunned and said, "Why? You have to know that the Xianyuan sword is not only a powerful divine weapon among the humans, it is also the symbol of Emperor Huang. With the Xianyuan sword, it will be a huge blow to the Jili clan and will also have a huge effect on increasing the confidence of the 4 clans. Now that we are at a complete disadvantage, do you have any other ideas?" Chiyu said, You have received the weapons that I asked Elder Emohua to send over, right? Irua's eyes lit up and she said, "Yes, I have received them. However, we don't know how to use them. Furthermore, the weapons look very strange. I knew that you would come, so I sealed them up." Chiyu said, "In my plan, those weapons are the most important things for you to fight against the Jili people. I can continuously provide you with ammunition. You have all seen the power of these weapons previously. I think that as long as these weapons are used on a large scale by the warriors of the various clans, the Jili people might not be that scary. The people that I brought this time all know how to use these weapons. I will let them teach you how to use them. You can choose some of the smarter young people from the various clans who don't have a huge beast as a partner to use them. Don't worry, before they completely master how to use these weapons, I will not leave this place. You should have already realized that the people that I brought are not weak. This time, I also want them to increase their combat experience in fighting against the Jili people." Irua looked at Chiyu and said, "Since that's the case, let's do it according to your plan. I believe in you." Chiyu had already solved the biggest problem for the godly beasts. Without the Bull Demon King, the godly beasts were much more confident than before. Even though there was still a huge gap between the abilities of the godly beasts and the godly beasts, Irua and Mo firmly believed that the godly beasts would definitely rise again in a short period of time. Irua brought Chiyu and the rest to the headquarters of the Two tribe, which was the wooden house on the hill where Chiyu, Wenting and the Snow Girl had stayed previously. As the high priestess of the Two tribe, Irua had absolute authority in the Two tribe. She quickly arranged a place to rest for the 100-odd people that Chiyu had brought along. Following Chiyu's suggestion, the members of the Zodiac team from the future world changed their clothes into the grass clothes and skirts of the Two tribe, which gave them a unique flavor. With Irua's introduction, Chiyu found out that the main army of the Jili people was stationed in a valley a few hundred miles away from here. There were about 50,000 Jili people in the army. Among them, there was 1 Natun for every 1,000 and 1 Nali for every 5,000. There were 10 Nali leading the army of the Jili people. At the same time, although he had never appeared before, it was said that the demon god Chiyu had been reborn. On the human side, the total number of troops from the 4 tribes was about 200,000. It sounded like a huge number and was 4 times the number of Jili people. However, in terms of overall abilities, they were far inferior. If Irua, the Azure Dragon and the Black Tortoise were not here, the Jili people would only need 10,000 people to completely destroy the human army. In the human army, there were less than 200 heroes who had giant beasts as their partners. Their giant beasts varied in strength. Even if they had giant beasts as their partners, they could only kill ordinary Jili people. They were not a match for Natun or Nali. Among the Jili people, all the Natun and Nali had their own giant beasts as their partners. As a result, they were much stronger than the humans. 10 days ago, the Jili people had launched an all-out attack. Because of Chiyu's request to Emohua, Emohua had led the godly beasts and risked being destroyed by the beasts to help the humans fend off the attack of the Jili people's army. At the same time, the Jili people had suffered significant losses. However, what shocked Emohua was that the 10 Nali of the Jili people were very powerful. With the help of their giant beasts, they could even fight against 10,000-year-old beasts. As a result, the Jili people's army had suffered significantly less losses. Furthermore, the beasts had rushed over not long after the battle had started. Helpless, Emohua could only lead the godly beasts to lure the beasts away. He could only leave the battle on this side to the humans. After a short discussion, Chiyu decided to let the members of the Zodiac team that he had brought along teach the elites of the 4 clans how to use their weapons. Irua had specially picked 2,000 elites from the 4 clans. In order to strengthen the relationship between the 4 clans, she did not choose too many people from her own clan. Instead, she chose 500 people from each clan. The members of the Zodiac team were all from the 4 great clans of the East. The 4 great clans were extremely powerful in the entire Yanhuang Republic. As the elites of their respective clans, which of them had not used firearms before? Thus, it was not difficult for them to be instructors. As for the overall training of the use of firearms, Hu Guang and Ian were in charge. Given their status as the big shots in the arms industry, they were the most suitable candidate. In 10 days, the 2,000 elites of the 4 clans had already grasped the basics of how to use firearms. Even though there was still a gap in their accuracy, they could at least use the weapons well. In these 10 days, Qi Yu had also used the aura of the Xianyuan sword to help all the members of the Zodiac team subdue the golden-winged great pings in their bodies. The golden-winged great pings had also regained their mobility after the seal that Yan Xiaoi had placed on them was lifted. In terms of overall strength, the Zodiac team had at least doubled under the influence of the golden-winged great pings. "Mom, I want to meet the Jili people tonight." Qi Yu stood in front of Yi Ruo and said calmly. Yi Ruo held on to Qi Yu's hand and looked at his faint red eyes. Even though Qi Yu did not say the reason, the fact that he was blind still made Yi Ruo sad for a long time. "Qi Yu, I think you should stay here and help Mom. When the Jili people attack, we can retaliate. With the weapons that you have brought, we will definitely be able to achieve victory. Now that your eyes are blind, I really cannot bear to ask you to do anything for us." Sensing Yi Ruo's concern, the lines on Qi Yu's face became much gentler. He smiled and said, "Mom, don't worry. Nothing will happen. As Ink Kirin, do you think I will be afraid of those Jili people? Even if Qi Yu has been resurrected, I still want to meet him. Don't forget, I am also the disciple of Emperor Huang. Frankly speaking, I came here this time to see you and help the humans overcome the current crisis. Another reason is that I want to use the battle with the Jili people to increase the combat power of my comrade. War is the best training ground. Now that they have rested for 10 days, if they do not continue training, it will go against my original intention. Even though my eyes are blind, have you forgotten? I am the source of nature. As long as there are plants, I will be able to sense everything around me. Using the mind's eye to observe is much clearer than using the naked eye, isn't it?" Yi Ruo thought for a moment and said, "All right then, it is indeed time for us to find out the actual situation of the Jili people." Previously, Mo Hua and the rest did not really deal a blow to the Jili people. It is very abnormal that they have not taken any action for so many days. There are only about 100 of you. Even though your abilities are not weak, you must still be careful. Do not get surrounded by the other party. The Jili people are all ferocious. You must not treat them as ordinary people. Qi Yu nodded and said, "I understand. You shall stabilize the defense here and be careful of any sneak attacks from the Jili people. We will set off as soon as the sky turns dark." After chatting with Yi Ruo, Qi Yu returned to the room that Yi Ruo had prepared for him. Before he reached the door, he saw Shang Bing standing there waiting for him. Shang Bing seemed to be in a very good mood. Ever since she came to the era of the ancient beasts, she had been training very hard. However, she had never been as happy as she was now because she had followed Qi Yu every day. This world was so beautiful. Furthermore, her body was different from ordinary people. The body that was cultivated by the world's most outstanding genes became more and more apparent as her abilities improved. Group training was painful for the members of the Zodiac team. However, Shang Bing could always complete it easily. Now, in terms of combat power, other than the Zodiac Guardian God warriors, only the plant spirits in the forest could withstand her speed and attack power. Jida and the members of the Zodiac team were no match for her. Snow Girl's ability was more special. For some unknown reason, she was especially close to Shang Bing. Therefore, the two of them had not fought before. Overall, even if Shang Bing was not as good as her, the difference was not too great. "Qi Yu, you are back." As soon as she saw Qi Yu, Shang Bing quickly greeted him. The gloomy aura that came from the dark parliament had disappeared a lot. Now, she looked like a cheerful young girl. However, her figure was a little too hot. Under the clothes made of leaves and rattan, healthy and elastic skin was revealed. Especially her pair of slender and round thighs, it was easy for people to have wild and fanciful thoughts. Fortunately, Chi-Yu could not see now. Otherwise, he would not be able to control himself, as he had a special relationship with Xiang Bing. These days, during the continuous training, the awkwardness caused by the incident with Snow Girl had faded a lot. Snow Girl was very obedient and did not look for Chi-Yu again. Just like before, she still called Chi-Yu daddy. Ryue and Chi-Yu had been together for the longest time. However, after the two of them had been intimate a few times, Ryue could not take it anymore. She had secretly hinted to Ming Ming. However, although Ming Ming looked lively and cheerful, she was very conservative in this aspect. She was so shy that she did not dare to cross the last line of defense with Chi-Yu. Therefore, Ryue looked for Xiang Bing. Xiang Bing, are you not training with everyone? Chi-Yu felt Xiang Bing's accelerated heartbeat, and could not help but ask in surprise. Xiang Bing blushed and said, "It's nothing. Everyone is training. Although we do not have the mission you gave us now, everyone is very hard-working. Maybe they are used to training recently." Chi-Yu smiled faintly. "I'm not afraid of them not training. Now that every team member has the golden-winged Great Peng as a restriction, who doesn't want to surpass the golden-winged Great Peng's strength as soon as possible and have a true giant beast companion? Xiang Bing, why did you come looking for me?" Xiang Bing looked at him bitterly and said, "Must I only look for you because I have something to do? Back then, you were the one who insisted that I come back with you." Hearing her words, Chi-Yu could not help but say apologetically, "I'm sorry. As you can see, I have too many things to do these days. I did not have time to take care of you." Xiang Bing took a step forward and took the initiative to put her arms around Chi-Yu's waist. She said with slight annoyance, "Then you can make it up to me now. Anyway, I have nothing to do. I specially came to accompany you." Feeling the heat from Xiang Bing's body, Chi-Yu could not help but feel his heartbeat quicken. He stroked her long hair and said, "Who said that there is nothing to do? We're going to set off tonight and start a new training. Isn't this important? Unless you don't want to participate, you should go back and prepare. At the same time, you should inform everyone to cancel this afternoon's training. There will be an operation tonight." The affection in Xiang Bing's heart quickly dissipated because of Chi-Yu's words. It was replaced by excitement. After all, she came from the Dark Parliament and was very warlike. "Chi-Yu, are we going to fight the Jilly people?" Chi-Yu smiled and nodded. "That's right. Tonight we will be scouting and ambushing. As long as we have a detailed plan, we will definitely be able to deal a heavy blow to the Jilly people. Do you want to go?" Xiang Bing said, "Of course I want to. You have to bring me along." "All right, I will go inform everyone now." After saying that, she immediately went to look for the others excitedly. Feeling Xiang Bing's excitement, Chi-Yu could not help but smile. "Jilly people, here I come. Chi-Yu, have you really been resurrected? If that's the case, then let me meet you, the demon god, today." In the evening, after eating some fruits, Chi-Yu led all the Zodiac warriors and the 12 Zodiac squads to quietly set off. Not only would they be able to conserve energy, but they would also be able to move faster. Chi-Yu ordered the 12 Zodiac squads to summon their giant beast companions. They had left the campsite and climbed over a mountain before releasing their giant beast companions from within their bodies. For a moment, the darkened sky was covered by a faint golden light that looked like a dark cloud. 120 golden-winged eagles quietly appeared in the sky without making any sound. Because the other Zodiac warriors, Jida and Snow Girl, did not have any flying mounts, Chi-Yu kept them into the space inside the Kirin Pearl. Then, he ordered the Zodiac squad to urge the golden-winged eagles to hurry on their journey. In order not to be discovered by the Jilly people, they deliberately chose to fly at a low altitude of 5 to 10 meters above the ground. 100 meters was a very short distance to the golden-winged eagles. In a short period of time, they had already stealthily arrived near the valley that Ruah had mentioned. This was the first time they were riding on their giant beast companions. Hence, the Zodiac squad members were in a special state of excitement. All of them were rubbing their palms together, and could not wait to fight with the Jili people immediately. Chiyu ordered everyone to keep the golden-winged eagles and release the Zodiac warriors from her body. Because this was a surprise attack, she did not bring along the black and white twin dragons. Everyone surrounded Chiyu and quietly waited for her orders. Chiyu said, "In the past, I have never really fought with the Jili people. Even though I have come into contact with them, I do not have enough understanding of them. According to Mother, the troops of the Jili people that are attacking us are the elites of the Jili people. Their battle prowess, especially their valiant attacks, are extremely strong. This is especially so for the chief class Na-Tun and the chief class Nali. It is hard to say exactly how strong they are. Hence, we cannot be careless this time. Otherwise, it will be hard for us to escape unscathed. Let us prepare to take action immediately. Snow Girl, Shangbing, Jida, and the Plant Soul, the 4 of you will stay here. Among the Zodiac warriors, Hu Guang, Ian, Mingming, and Su Dong will follow me to the Jili people's camp to investigate. Jida and the others will also stay here and listen to Ryue's orders. Ryue, wait for my signal. I will inform you with my spiritual strength at any time. At that time, you will lead everyone to directly attack the hinterland of the Jili tribe. Remember, without my order, don't let them use their giant beasts at the critical moment of life and death. After all, our mission is not only to kill the enemy, but also to train the members of the Zodiac squad. Even though the golden-winged eagles are good, we cannot rely on them. Otherwise, our training would have been in vain." After giving some simple instructions, Chiyu led Hu Guang, Ian, Mingming, and Su Dong towards the valley where the Jili people were stationed. He naturally had a purpose for bringing the 4 of them here. Mingming and Su Dong could fly. Of course, it was more difficult for Mingming to fly. However, her power had already reached the 7 Clouds realm, so it was much easier for her to use the young phoenix transformation. Once they encountered danger, they could still escape. Ian was the most agile of the Zodiac warriors. No matter what kind of battle he was in, there was no need to worry about him. Even Chiyu would have a hard time restraining him without using his domain-type power. It was obvious that Chiyu had a special purpose for bringing Hu Guang here. Chapter 228. The sky was now completely dark. Chiyu led the 4 of them to a spot about 1 kilometer away from the valley and stopped. He realized that there were troops of the Jili people patrolling on both sides of the valley. Chiyu's eyes flickered as he waited there quietly. Chiyu had seen the Jili people before. Now that he saw them again, his expression instantly turned grave. He was shocked to realize that the people in front of him were not only more imposing than the Jili people he had seen previously, but the energy aura they exuded was also much stronger. Could it be that the Jili people as a whole had undergone a mutation? Or had he encountered an ordinary powerhouse among the Jili people? No, that was not right. After observing them quietly for 10 minutes, Chiyu realized that even the most ordinary Jili people were much stronger than they had been the last time he had seen them. What was going on? It was no wonder that the Jili people did not suffer too many losses when Mo led the divine beasts to attack them. Their overall abilities had obviously improved. Could it be that the entire Jili people had been modified by some special energy? Although he was shocked by the increase in the Jili people's abilities, Chiyu did not give up on his objective. He gestured to the 4 people behind him, and his body moved stealthily. Under the effect of the Kirin invisibility, he disappeared into thin air. His spiritual power was like a radar that accurately informed Chiyu of the locations of the Jili people who were in charge of patrolling the area. Every Jili people was an energy point in his spiritual world. Destroying these energy points was obviously what Chi Yu needed to do the most. He silently arrived behind a Jili people. The Jili people were very tall and big. The fire thundercloud force in Chi Yu's body circulated rapidly, and his body floated up from the ground. Then, his right hand pressed on the head of the Jili people. A dark red light flashed and disappeared. Because of the attack, Chi Yu's invisibility immediately disappeared. There were a total of more than 10 Jili tribesmen patrolling this area. Perhaps it was because they were extremely confident in their own strength, so when they patrolled, they kept a distance of about 50 meters from each other and slowly moved in the opposite direction. Chi Yu suddenly launched an attack. The appearance of the fire energy and the energy fluctuations immediately attracted the attention of the others. However, before the Jili people could see who had launched a sneak attack on them, they were already enveloped by a dark red glow. Perhaps it was overkill to use the 1000 transformation Jade Pearl Realm technique to kill the Jili people. However, it was also because of this that he managed to get rid of the patrolling Jili soldiers in a few breaths' time. There was not even a single sound or trace left. The charred Jili soldiers were washed away by Chi Yu's earth-water thundercloud force and disappeared without a trace. Chi Yu waved his hand. Ming Ming and the other 3 immediately chased after him. Chi Yu led them to the edge of the narrow valley and looked down. Setting up camp in a narrow valley was obviously something that an ordinary army could not imagine. This was because, under such circumstances, it was very easy for them to be sneak attacked. Once they occupied a powerful position from above, the camp below would definitely be in great danger. However, the Jili people clearly did not think that humans had the ability to sneak attack them. Furthermore, the camp where they were camped was indeed very unique. There was no real place to stay at all. Most of the Jili people were eating and drinking around a bonfire. They were not eating fruits but the meat of some animals. They simply roasted the meat over the fire and even ate it raw. This showed the ferocity of the Jili people. The place where they rested was directly on the ground. With their strong bodies, the cliffs on both sides of the narrow valley were the only place that could shelter them from the wind and rain. Chi Yu frowned slightly. Were the Jili people really not afraid of sneak attacks? There were only a dozen of them patrolling just now. Since they were camped in the valley, the cliffs on both sides were obviously very important places. A large number of soldiers should be stationed there. However, before Chi Yu could think further, he suddenly felt a shapeless pressure coming from behind him. His acute mental strength allowed him to react immediately. He turned around and was already facing behind him as he scanned the area with his mental strength. Chi Yu was shocked to discover that the 5 of them were actually surrounded. Even with his mental strength, he did not know where the enemy was. His sudden appearance gave him a huge shock. Could it be that among the Jili people, there was an expert who was immune to the detection of his mental strength? However, it was not just one person who had appeared. It was an army of 1,000 Jili people. Chi Yu's heart sank as he looked at the tall figures that kept appearing in the forest. He was not afraid of these people. Instead, he suddenly felt that the Jili people did not rely solely on their martial strength as he had imagined. In terms of intelligence, they were not inferior to ordinary humans. In fact, they might even surpass them. Walking in front of the enemy were 5 6-meter-tall Na-Tun. Their bodies were as majestic as mountains. Moreover, they were riding on their giant beast companions, which made their bodies look even taller. The 5 ancient giant beasts that Na-Tun was riding on were mammoth. They were an extremely ferocious giant beast, and were famous for their huge bodies. They were a type of fearsome beast, but they were of a very low level. They did not have any special abilities, and only had great strength. However, it was not surprising that Na-Tun would choose them. After all, other than giant beasts like the mammoths, how could ordinary giant beasts be their mounts? 1,000 Jili people followed behind the 5 Na-Tun and slowly surrounded them. They covered almost the entire area. They did not have any weapons in their hands. Their upper limbs, which were as thick as tree trunks, were their best offensive treasures. Su Dong whispered into Chi Yu's ear, "What should we do? Should we call Ryue and the rest over?" Chi Yu shook his head and replied, "No, there's no need. Since we've already been discovered, there's no need for that. Since we have been discovered, the Jili people in the valley behind us will definitely react. This is not a good time to call Ryue and the rest over. When the battle begins, leave the 5 Natan to me. You will deal with the ordinary Jili people soldiers. End the battle quickly. Kill as many as you can. Hu Guang, you will be the main attacker. The Jili people rely on their strong bodies. They rarely dodge during the battle, and it is very difficult for them to dodge. Your goal is to infect as many of them as possible with the poison. Ian, your target is the eyes of the soldiers. Leave the rest to Su Dong and Ming Ming." After Chi Yu gave his instructions, his mental energy increased greatly. He did not believe that the 5 Na-Tun in front of him would be able to escape his mental energy search. There must be another expert here who had concealed the aura of the Na-Tun and the soldiers. That was why they were trapped in a tight encirclement. And this person was the one who could pose a threat to them. Unfortunately, even though Chi Yu's mental energy covered a large area, he did not discover anything else. Apart from the 1,000 enemies in front of him, he did not discover anything else. The 5 Na-Tun looked at Chi Yu cautiously. They had seen how Chi Yu had killed more than 10 of them. With just a flash of the dark red light, their companions had been turned into ashes. Such a powerhouse was simply too powerful. Even the Na-Tun had to be careful. After all, it was just as Chi Yu had predicted. The people of the Jili tribe were not only fierce and tough, but their intelligence had also increased to a certain extent. This was the only way they could maintain an overwhelming advantage when facing a large number of human soldiers. Chi Yu led the 4 Na-Tun people towards the Na-Tun. Since they could not find the person hiding in the dark, they would fight. During the battle, as long as they killed a large number of Jili people, they were not afraid that the person would not come out. A faint light was emitted from the bodies of the 4 Zodiac guardian god warriors. Faced with the Jili people, the powerful evil race that their ancient ancestor, Emperor Huang, had faced, everyone was filled with the desire to fight. In particular, over the past month, everyone's abilities had improved tremendously. They wanted to see how powerful they had become after their improvements. Chi Yu walked at the front. Facing him was the Na-Tun in the middle. With its 6-meter-tall body and the 5-meter-tall mammoth, Chi Yu was no different from an ant in the Na-Tun's eyes. However, it was this human, who was much shorter than the average Na-Tun, who gave it a lot of pressure. Looking at Chi Yu's white hair, the Na-Tun could no longer endure the mental pressure. It roared angrily and a huge stone rod appeared in its hand. It pointed in Chi Yu's direction. The mammoth beneath him let out a roar of fire, causing the earth to tremble as it charged in Chi Yu's direction. It wanted to grind Chi Yu into meat paste to vent the fear in its heart. Chi Yu shouted, "Attack!" The 4 Zodiac guardian god warriors behind him charged in 2 different directions. They had absolute confidence in Chi Yu's abilities. 5 Na-Tun was nothing. Back in the west, Chi Yu had killed 4 archangels. No matter how powerful the Jili people were, they could not be compared to the archangels in the heavenly realm. A large amount of dust was stirred up by the 5 mammoth. In the blink of an eye, the 5 Na-Tun were in front of Chi Yu. Then, the leading Na-Tun raised its stone rod and smashed it down on Chi Yu's head. The huge stone rod seemed to weigh at least a few hundred kilograms. Mammoth also lifted one of its legs and stomped down on Chi Yu. Chi Yu snorted coldly. He did not even try to dodge. He had been waiting for a fight for a long time. Ever since he returned from London, he had been harboring violent tendencies in his heart. However, he had not been able to express them. This was the perfect time for him to express them. Chi Yu did not use any of his weapons, nor did he use any of his Qilin skills. Instead, He relied on his own strength to meet the Tun's attack. Right fist. That was Chi Yu's right fist. His body instantly swelled up, and the black clothes on his upper body were torn apart. With the help of the thundercloud force and nature source, Chi Yu's body suddenly grew to a height of 3 meters. His swollen right fist met the Na Tun's stone rod. At the same time, he raised his left and right hands to meet the mammoth's leg. Amidst the loud bang, stone chips flew everywhere. Due to the strong energy fluctuations, a large number of stone chips pierced the mammoth's thick skin. Before its leg could step on Chi Yu, it screamed in pain and took a few steps back. The Na Tun, who was on its back, trembled violently. When it looked at the stone rod in its hand, it found that the huge stone rod only had a handle left. Chi Yu was shocked to see that the Na Tun's strength was much greater than he had imagined. Especially in a head-on collision, the Na Tun had the advantage of gravity from above, which made the Na Tun's strength even stronger. However, such strength was far from enough for Chi Yu. Chi Yu suddenly retreated and dodged the attacks from the other 4 Na Tun. The 4 huge stone rods created a huge pit on the ground, which looked somewhat terrifying. Chi Yu moved. His speed made his body look like a ghost. He retreated and advanced again, passing through the gray earth fog. In almost an instant, he once again appeared in front of the Na Tun that he had collided with before. Right arm. It was still his right arm. He bombarded the Na Tun with a heavy punch. With a loud bang, the punch accurately hit the Na Tun's shoulder. How powerful was Kirin's arm? It was known as the Skybreaker. The scales on the Na Tun's body were extremely thick, but they were much inferior to Kirin's arm. There was a burst of blood. Chi Yu's punch had shattered the scales on the Na Tun's shoulder. Chi Yu's punch had actually created a huge hole in the Na Tun's shoulder. It looked somewhat terrifying. The Na Tun cried out in pain. No one knew what it was shouting, but the other 4 Na Tun had already pounced on Chi Yu. However, this time, their bodies were covered in green energy, and the stench was nauseating. Corrosive energy. Chi Yu immediately recognized the origin of the green light. He did not dare to let it touch his body. With a shake of his shoulder, he had already dodged it. The Na Tun's attack and defense were extremely strong. Moreover, they were more agile than Chi Yu had imagined. After the battle with Chi Yu began, the 5 Na Tun surrounded Chi Yu and attacked him with all sorts of method. Unfortunately, although they could use their corrosive energy, the area they could cover was too small. It was impossible for them to capture Chi Yu's figure. Sometimes they would even touch their companions' bodies. Chi Yu would not be courteous with them. He had not vented his anger for a long time, and at this moment, he completely unleashed it. For a moment, muffled sounds could be heard. It was the sound of fists colliding with scales. Although he was surrounded by the 5 Na Tun, blood continued to gush out of the Na Tun's body. The Na Tun's body was extremely huge, and they had a lot of health. When Chi Yu attacked at the fastest speed, he could even see the Na Tun's body explode into a mist of blood. Chi Yu did not intend to destroy them immediately. He wanted to use the Na Tun to lure out the person hiding in the dark. Therefore, when he attacked, he would choose the spot behind the Na Tun. This way, not only would he inflict more pain on his opponent, but he would also not let them die because of his powerful attacks. While Chi Yu was fighting the Na Tun like a cat chasing a mouse, Ming Ming and the other 3 were also fighting the ordinary Jili people. The battle strategy that Chi Yu had prepared was simple, but it was very effective. The Jili people's attack power was undoubtedly very fast, but it was still a far cry from Yi-An's agility. Perhaps Yi-An's strength was not very strong, but his speed and agility made it impossible for the Jili people to catch him. The golden light flashed continuously in the sky. Every time Ian landed, he would scream in agony. There would be a shrill and miserable shriek. After reaching the 7-cloud realm, Ian's strength had greatly increased, especially his speed. Right now, he was like a golden thread weaving around the battlefield. No matter how hard the Jilly people tried to surround him, no matter how they attacked him, it was impossible to truly restrict his movements. Since the beginning of the battle, Hu Guang had been pouncing in the same direction as Ian. He had activated his own origin mutation, and his entire body was covered with a layer of slippery scales as he weaved through the Jilly people. As the Emperor Black Mamba, his toxicity would continue to grow as his thundercloud force increased. The Black Mamba was one of the most aggressive snakes, not to mention the Emperor Black Mamba. Hu Guang's attack frequency was extremely fast. His hands had turned into poisonous fangs, and sharp nails had appeared on all 10 of his fingers. Although the defense of the Jilly people wasn't bad, they were still vulnerable to Hu Guang's corrosive poison. Their scales seemed to be made of paper as they were instantly corroded through. At the same time, the Black Mamba's poison had also integrated into their bodies. Hu Guang left immediately after coming into contact with it, and his body was extremely slippery, wanting to grab hold of his body that had a certain level of immunity to physical attacks. It was extremely difficult to catch him. The bodies of the Jilly tribesmen were indeed too strong. The poison of the Black Mamba Emperor was so strong that after they were injected with the poison, they could still hold on for a minute before falling to the ground and convulsing. Screams of agony could be heard as Hu Guang and Ian attacked one after another. They were either covering their eyes that were flowing with green blood and howling in pain, or their entire body had turned from green to black as they convulsed violently on the ground. In just a short while, there were already 100 people who had lost their ability to fight under the joint attack of Hu Guang and Ian. At this moment, the two of them were like fish in water. Other than the poison produced by Hu Guang's body being limited, they didn't consume any other energy. On the other hand, the battle between Ming Ming and Su Dong and the Jilly people was a lot more open and aboveboard. Su Dong's tiger palms moved up and down. He, who had used his nature mutation, was so powerful that the people of the Jilly tribe were stunned. Every time his tiger palm struck, he would definitely send one of his opponents flying. On the other hand, Ming Ming was like Su Dong's shadow. She was always hidden behind him. As long as a Jilly people was sent flying by Su Dong's palm, a colorful light would immediately shoot out from Ming Ming's arms. Amidst the ear-piercing sound of friction, the throat of the Jilly people would be slit. With the cooperation of the two of them, they were able to destroy everything in their way. Furthermore, none of the Jilly people who passed through their hands survived. All of them died after their throats were slit. As Chi Yu beat up the 5 Natans, he observed the situation. His mental energy was also maintained in a highly tense state as he waited for the mysterious person to appear. At this moment, a large number of Jilly people's soldiers appeared from the narrow valley. Under the lead of a few Natans, they surrounded Chi Yu's group from the opposite direction. When they saw that the ground was littered with the corpses of their own people, they weren't afraid. Instead, they became even more ferocious and charged towards Chi Yu's group without any hesitation. From the looks of it, they wouldn't be satisfied until they tore Chi Yu's group into pieces. Chi Yu's eyes gleamed. "All right, since you won't come out, I'll add a little more medicine." As he thought about this, Chi Yu floated up, and the silver light suddenly exploded. Then, 5 thunderbolts were shot out from his hand. The Natans, who were still attacking Chi Yu despite being in pain, were instantly paralyzed and rooted to the ground. The paralyzing ability of the 7-cloud thundercloud force was incomparable to before. Without half an hour, the Natans wouldn't be able to extricate themselves from the paralysis. No matter how strong their bodies were, they couldn't possibly be insulated. Of course, to Chi Yu, he didn't need half an hour. His body, which was enveloped by the silver light, spun rapidly and kicked 5 times with his right leg at lightning speed. The scene of a watermelon bursting appeared. The heads of the 5 Natans were instantly smashed by Chi Yu like 5 watermelons. One had to know that the heads of the Jilly people were the hardest part of their bodies. The fact that Chi Yu could smash the heads of the Natans with the strength of his legs showed how powerful he was. The 5 huge bodies fell to the ground almost at the same time with a loud crash. Chi Yu, who was floating in midair like a demon, coldly sensed the aura of the Jili people around him. His hands were already raised and the Qilin pearl in front of his chest had already turned into a deep purple. The dark sky had become even darker and a large patch of dark clouds was gathering in this direction. The scene of the 5 Natans being destroyed in an instant shocked everyone. Even the ferocious Jili people didn't dare to charge at Chi Yu when they saw him in the air. No one wanted to be the sacrificial lamb under Chi Yu's feet. The few Natans that appeared after him also looked at Chi Yu cautiously. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. Their huge beast companions had appeared next to them. Although they were different, they were all ferocious beasts that were around 3,000 years old. Facing the aura of the divine beast king's Kirin, these ferocious beasts instinctively retreated. Although they didn't attack Chi Yu, it didn't mean that Chi Yu wouldn't continue to attack. Chi Yu clenched his right hand and a long purple sword appeared in his hand. It was the Kirin illusion. Chi Yu pointed the sword at the sky and snorted coldly. Jili people, go to hell. As he swung the sword, the sky instantly lit up. Then, a thunderclap was heard. A huge bolt of lightning that was as thick as a water tank came crashing down like a bomb. It exploded in the midst of the densest group of Jili people. In the face of nature, no matter how strong one's body was, what was the use? Instantly, dozens of Jili tribesmen were sent flying high into the air. Natans knew that if they didn't destroy Chi Yu, their losses would be even greater. In a panic, the intelligent subordinates rushed towards Chi Yu. At this moment, the Jili people were in chaos. Chi Yu snorted coldly and swung the sword in his right hand. Every time he swung the sword, at least 10 Jili people were killed. The 7-cloud-level thundercloud force summoned Kirin's lightning rush formation. As long as the power of his thundercloud was not exhausted, the heavenly lightning's bombardment could continue. However, the more troublesome thing was that the heavenly lightning's energy was too large and unstable, so it required Chi Yu's mental strength to guide it. The Kirin mirror appeared in Chi Yu's left hand. It wasn't used to block the enemy's attack. The black Kirin mirror flickered with silver veins. As Chi Yu waved his left hand, it became the Grim Reaper's scythe that reaped lives. As it floated out, several Jili people were instantly sliced in half. It felt good. It had been a long time since he had such a good time killing. Chi Yu even imagined that he was killing the people from the Vatican and Greece. He felt as though he was taking revenge for Klinsmann, Wen Ting, and the Emperor's Heart Snow Lotus King. The blood in his body boiled continuously. The massive killing intent seemed to evoke the feeling of demonization. At this moment, a wave of peaceful energy flowed into Chi Yu's body from his wrist. The Buddha's power in the original relic bead was no longer enough to deter the powerful Chi Yu. However, before Master Zagru left, he channeled a large amount of his Buddha's power into the relic bead, causing the Buddha's power to be much stronger than before. Therefore, when Chi Yu's killing intent surged, the Buddha's power appeared and calmed the surging emotions in Chi Yu's heart. Just as Chi Yu's killing intent subsided slightly, he sensed danger. At this moment, he had just woken up from the thrill of killing. Without any hesitation, his body suddenly flashed 10 meters to the side. At this moment, the place where he was previously was already engulfed by a dark green light. The corpses of several Jili tribe soldiers turned into black water with a puffing sound. Chi Yu's mind power still couldn't detect the presence of any living creatures. When he turned around, he saw 10 black figures floating in the air. These black figures were lined up in a row, and each of them was about the same size as Tun. Their bodies were glowing with a dark green light. They looked somewhat similar to the dark liches of the Covenant of Darkness. However, their auras were completely evil, and they didn't seem dark at all. The corrosive energy attack just now had been unleashed by these 10 people. Soon, Chi-Yu understood why his mind power couldn't detect the presence of these people. It was because the 10 black figures in front of him weren't living creatures. The source of nature's energy was built on the foundation of nature's energy, so it was extremely sensitive to living creatures. The immense mind power that Chi-Yu had obtained was built on the foundation of the source of nature. Therefore, when the other party wasn't living, his source of nature's energy naturally couldn't detect them. The 10 black figures quickly floated in Chi-Yu's direction. Apart from the edges of their shadows, which looked similar to tons, they didn't have any corpses. Chi-Yu didn't know what these dark green figures were, but he knew that they were the reason why he couldn't detect the presence of the Jili people's soldiers. The 4 human tribes didn't know that the Jili people had such a secret weapon. It was no wonder that they dared to set up camp in a valley like this. They were probably waiting for the humans to launch a sneak attack. This was a trap. When the Jili people saw the 10 black figures, they immediately retreated to the sides under Tun's command. They surrounded Ming Ming and the other 3 like a tidal wave. As the saying went, a large number of ants could bite an elephant to death. There was a limit to human strength, and the ferocity of the Jili people meant that they wouldn't let these enemies off. In their hearts they only had one thought: kill. Chi-Yu floated in the air calmly. He was very clear about the strength of Ming Ming and the other 3. They were 4 7-cloud Zodiac guardian god warriors. Unless the other party had a 10,000-year-old beast, they wouldn't be able to defeat the 4 Zodiac guardian god warriors in a short period of time. It wouldn't be a bad thing to let them train under such immense pressure. Moreover, his mental strength was constantly monitoring the battlefield. If any danger occurred, he would be able to react immediately. When Chi-Yu saw the 10 black figures, he immediately realized that they were definitely a secret to the Jili people. Otherwise, they wouldn't have appeared only after the 5 of them had killed so many Jili people. It seemed like they had been deliberately hiding their track. What exactly are these ghost-like fellows? They can't be ghosts, right? At this thought, Chi-Yu suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. He wasn't afraid of other things, but how could he defeat ghosts that were intangible and illusory? He didn't even feel this way when he met the Bull Demon King. However, Chi-Yu quickly recovered from his shock. So what if they were ghosts? Even if ghosts really existed, they were probably a form of energy. As long as they were energy, there would be a way to deal with them. Chapter 229. The light in Chi-Yu's eyes grew stronger as he silently watched the 10 black figures closing in on him. In this short period of time, he had already gone through all the abilities he possessed, trying to see what was the most lethal against ghosts and spirits. After thinking about it, he realized that among his abilities, there were many that could restrain this kind of evil chi, such as the Sarira bead on his hand, his thundercloud force, and so on. Thunder was the accumulation of the righteous chi of heaven and earth, and it seemed to have a restraining effect on evil chi. Thinking of this, he slowly pointed the sword in his hand at the shadow in front of him. The purple electric light in the air flowed, and a thunderbolt struck down with a loud bang. Its target was a shadow on the left of Chi-Yu. The thunderbolt suddenly flourished and instantly enveloped the shadow. However, Chi-Yu, whose mental strength was linked to the thunderbolt, realized that the heavenly thunder triggered by his thundercloud force did not seem to hit anything. Instead, it left a piece of scorched earth on the ground. At this moment, a large dark green light completely blocked all possible escape routes for Chi-Yu to dodge. In just an instant it enveloped him from the sky. A cold glint flashed in Chi-Yu's eyes. In the face of such an attack, he was not afraid at all. The fiery red light suddenly lit up, and surging flames shot up to 10 meters high. As soon as the dark green light came into contact with the Kirin's true fire, a popping sound was heard. The thunderbolt disappeared, but the dark green shadow was still floating there. Immunity to thunder. Although Chi-Yu was a little surprised, the Kirin's true fire completely destroyed the corrosive energy released by the other party. Since one type of thundercloud force did not work, he would try another type. It seemed that these shadow-like guys might not really be ghosts. Thinking of this, the earth-fire thundercloud force that soared into the sky immediately spread out and swept towards the 10 shadows. Thinking of this, the fire cloud power that soared into the sky immediately spread out and swept towards the 10 figures. The 10 screams appeared very abruptly, and they were closely connected. These 10 screams appeared very abruptly, and they came one after another, closely linked together. That voice sounded very sharp and had a very strong penetrating power. However, as soon as it appeared, it was extremely sharp. This caused Chi Yu's mind to feel as if it had been pricked by a needle, and his mind was momentarily in a trance. Soundwave attack? Chi Yu's mind was in a trance, but he didn't realize that he had also used soundwave attacks before. Although the Kirin's true fire that it emitted was slightly weaker, it was still much stronger than before. However, it still forced the 10 black shadows to retreat a little. Obviously, they were afraid of Kirin's true fire. Chi Yu rejoiced in his heart. As long as they had something they were afraid of, things would be easy. A glint flashed across his eyes. Chi Yu glared angrily and shouted, "Come, this wasn't just the vibration of sound waves." At the same time, with the help of Kirin's 9 words incantation, Kirin's true fire suddenly flourished. With the control of Chi Yu's huge mental power, he easily condensed the true fire into 10 different parts and charged at the 10 black shadows at the same time. Just when Chi Yu thought that he was about to succeed, the 10 black shadows suddenly disappeared without any warning in front of Kirin's true fire. Even Chi Yu didn't know what happened because his mental power couldn't lock on to these special creatures that didn't have any life aura. Or rather, they were dead things. What happened? How could they suddenly disappear? The true fire converged. Chi Yu's expression suddenly became a little ugly. Obviously, it wasn't him who destroyed them. Could it be that they could teleport? If that was the case, then these black shadows were too scary. Chi Yu took a deep breath and calmed himself down a little. He was now a mature man and wasn't as irritable as before. Well, didn't you guys disappear? That means you guys are preparing to launch a sneak attack on me. Since that's the case, I won't let you guys have any chance to launch a sneak attack. I don't believe that you guys won't appear again if I kill a large number of Jilly people. Thinking about this, the corners of Chi Yu's mouth curled up slightly. Suddenly, a fiery red light shone from his body and the red rhombus mark between his eyebrows instantly shone brightly. Kirin Red suddenly appeared and replaced the torn clothes on his body. It covered every inch of his skin. The appearance of Kirin Red immediately made Chi Yu the center of attention. After all, in this dark night, Chi Yu, who was wearing the fiery red Kirin Red armor, was very obvious. A faint light flashed in Chi Yu's eyes. With the full activation of the thundercloud force, his optic nerves became clearer and he could already distinguish some blurry lights and shadows. In fact, what he didn't know was that his blindness was caused by excessive grief over Wen-Ting's death. During the era of the primordial beasts, the natural energy here was much more abundant than it had been in his era. The energy of the origin of nature itself was able to continuously transform and repair the body. Chi Yu's eyesight had also started to gradually recover during the continuous cultivation process. As long as he continued to cultivate, it wouldn't take long for his originally bright eyes to return to normal. The Kirin Red had a strong amplification effect on the Kirin Real Fire. In fact, it could be said that the Kirin Real Fire itself was the Kirin Real Fire. Therefore, after using the Kirin Red, Chi Yu no longer guarded against the Black Shadow. Instead, he floated up and dashed towards the battle formation. The Kirin illusion in his hand instantly transformed into a huge sword that was the same size as the Xianyuan sword. With his left hand behind his back, Kirin held the huge sword in his right hand and pounced into the midst of the Jilly people. When facing humans, the Jilly people were ferocious. However, when they faced Chi Yu, this phenomenon was reversed. Their target also changed. The huge sword was bestowed with the energy of the Kirin Real Fire by Chi Yu. As he had been paying extra attention to his various thundercloud force cultivation, Chi Yu's Kirin real fire was more condensed than before. Every time he slashed with his sword, there would be a huge fire dragon. Wherever the sharp sword passed, the Jili people would definitely be unlucky. Chi Yu's participation instantly caused a bloodbath in the camp of the Jili people. Since the start of the battle, he had killed at least hundreds of Jili people. As the battle dragged on, Chi Yu realized that the energy consumption of Ming Ming and the other three had increased due to the addition of the Tundi. He knew that the time had come and temporarily ignored the black shadows that had appeared earlier. The huge sword circled around his body and sliced 4 Jili people soldiers into 8 pieces. Then, he let out a long howl and sent a signal to Ryue, who was far away. Meanwhile, there were more than 3,000 Jili people soldiers who had entered the narrow valley. Close to 1,000 had died in the hands of Chi Yu and the other 4. Due to the density of the soldiers, Ian's movement speed had increased. Although Hu Guang's body was slippery, his energy had been greatly depleted due to the continuous use of poison. Now, his attacking speed had also decreased. Even so, their ruthless attacks caused the eyes of the Jili people to turn red with anger. Ming Ming and Su Dong were no longer as relaxed as before. They were surrounded by enemies from all directions. At this moment, the two of them had their backs to each other as they attacked each other. Each of Su Dong's attacks was exceptionally solid. On the other hand, Ming Ming's arms were like 2 giant blades. The Azura Iron Wings technique was displayed to its fullest, even though it wasn't as easy to reap lives as Chi Yu's giant sword. Although she could not reap lives as easily as Chi Yu's huge sword, she could still severely injure at least 1 Jili people soldier. If not for the fact that the scales on the soldiers' bodies were too tough, Ming Ming would not have expended so much energy. 1,000 of the 3,000 Jili people soldiers had been killed. Yet, there were only 5 of them. To the Jili people, this was definitely shocking. This situation had only occurred not long ago when the mythical Beast King and the other mythical beasts had arrived. However, the mythical Beast King had only stayed for a short period of time. Hence, it did not cause too much damage to the Jili people. At this moment, Chi Yu and the rest were killing without any qualms. This caused the eyes of the Jili people to turn red with anger. When the 12 Zodiac teams quietly appeared on the flanks of the Jili people, the situation of the battle became even more obvious. The members of the 12 Zodiac teams did not have any weapons. However, their various special abilities were extremely lethal to the Jili people. This was especially true for the Zodiac Guardians who were charging at the front. They were like sharp blades that pierced deep into the enemy's camp. The youths from the 4 great families of the East, regardless of whether it was the Shin family's Wood special ability, the Su family's Fire special ability, the Zhou family's Metal special ability, or the Luo family's Earth special ability, all of them were unleashing powerful attacks. It felt as though they had entered a magical world. The sharp thorns of various plants flew in all directions, accompanied by scorching flame energy, sharp icicles, and sluggish water energy. There was also the extremely sharp metal special ability. With the increase in their numbers, the battle became much simpler. The 12 Zodiac teams, or rather, the Zodiac army, formed a triangular formation and pierced straight into the hinterland of the Jili people's army. The tip of this sharp blade was none other than the tyrant dragon king Ryue. Ryue had been waiting for a long time. The earth-shattering battle cries had already caused her to lose her patience. Although her temper had become much better after following Chi Yu, her temperament had become much better. She was born with the temperament of a queen, which gave her a domineering air that was not inferior to men. At this moment, in this military-like battle, she was able to display her formidable combat strength. One of them charged at the front. After completing the second stage of her origin evolution, the white scales on her body became extremely thick. Both of her hands had grown dragon claws that were 30 centimeters long. The claws flickered with a crystalline light as they flew up and down. Every Jilly People soldier who charged in front of her was immediately dismembered by her incomparably sharp dragon claws. Ryu didn't have to worry about whether the two wings would attack her or not. The two most powerful Zodiac Guardian warriors were protecting her on both sides. The one on the left was the lion mastiff, Guan Ping. As a dog Zodiac Guardian warrior, he had the combat strength of a lion. His tyrannical attacks caused the bones of the Jilly People to shatter continuously. On the other side was the Hummer, Changjie. His attack power was not inferior to Guan Ping's. Changjie was a person who loved to pursue strength. These days, he had been training hard with everyone. He had put in a lot of effort, and because of this, he had gained a lot. Now that he had broken through the Six Clouds realm, he could use the second stage of his origin evolution. His second stage was different from the others. Others would either grow hair, scales, or horns on their head. However, Changjie's origin evolution gave him muscles that were harder than granite. His body had swelled to a height of nearly 4 meters. His shoulders were extremely broad, and his muscles were like lumps of iron. Every time he punched or kicked, the air around him would let out a sharp whistle. In terms of the tyrannical strength of his body, only the lion mastiff, Guan Ping, could compare to him. With the protection of these two people, Ryu was able to unleash her tyrannical attack power. Ryu completely unleashed her tyrannical attack power. The T-Rex's sparkling white light was driven by the dragon's claws, and flesh and blood splattered everywhere. When the Zodiac attack core first appeared, the Jilly People were only slightly flustered. However, after a few breaths' time, Ryu had already charged in with everyone. In an instant, hundreds of Jilly People had lost their savage lives. After the members of the Zodiac attack corps entered the enemy's territory, they began to split up into their original teams. This time, they did not meet up with their own family members. Instead, they worked together with their own teams. With the coordination of different abilities, their attacks were unleashed to the limit. The wood energy entanglement could restrict the Jilly People's attacks, while the water skills could block the enemy's attack. On the other hand, the metal and fire elements were good at dealing damage to the opponent. For a time, the teams cooperated very well. With 10 people each, they were able to surround more enemies than they had and destroy them one by one. The Zodiac attack corps' triangular formation had turned into a circular formation. Like a huge circular saw, they continuously cut through the enemies around them. Every time a team suffered a powerful attack from the enemy, the circular formation would immediately rotate and use the strength of more people to force the enemy to retreat. When Chi Yu saw the Zodiac attack corps rushing in, he smiled faintly and shouted, 12 Zodiac attack corps, return to your positions. His shout was for Ming Ming and Su Dong to hear. Regardless of whether it was the triangular formation or the circular sawtooth formation, they were all developed by everyone together. Every formation had a different role for the Zodiac Guardian warriors. For example, the circular formation required the Zodiac Guardian warriors to coordinate with each other. Although the 4 teams did not have the Zodiac Guardian warriors, Shangbing, Snow Girl, Jida, and Plant Soul were the temporary leaders. However, they were not the Zodiac Guardian warriors. Moreover, Shangbing and Jida were slightly weaker, and their coordination was not as mature as the Zodiac Guardian warriors and their team members. In order to better practice the formation and strengthen the coordination of the Zodiac Guardian warriors, Chi Yu immediately asked Ming Ming and the rest to return to their positions. Hearing Chi Yu's voice, Ming Ming and Su Dong immediately increased their attack. Both of them pushed the second stage of origin mutation to the limit. A 7-colored feather flew in the air. The surrounding Jilly people screamed in pain. Ming Ming and Su Dong flew up, while Ian nimbly leaped up and landed on Su Zhao's back. As for Hu Guang, it was almost impossible to catch him with his slippery movements. In just a short while, he had already made his way out. Just as Ming Ming, Su Dong, and Ian were still in the air, and had yet to meet up with their team. Suddenly, something strange happened. The 10 black shadows that had attacked Chi Yu earlier appeared around them without warning. In the blink of an eye, a dark green light engulfed the 3 of them. The corrosive energy shocked the 3 of them. Moreover, these black shadows also released an erratic black energy. From the sky, the moment the dark green energy appeared, everything seemed to disappear into thin air. All that could be seen from below was darkness. Chi Yu had long been on guard against these fellows. Although he could not sense the 10 black figures' auras from below, he and Ming Ming were spiritually connected. As soon as they saw them under attack, make an effective response immediately. Wen Ting had already died because of him. He could not let his woman suffer any more harm. Scorching energy shot into the sky. Chi Yu did not pay any attention to the Jili people soldiers who were attacking him around him. Instead, he forcibly shot into the sky. In the next moment, a dark red light suddenly enveloped the sky and covered a large area. Don't you know how to conceal yourselves? Let's see how you can hide in my 1,000 changes of 4 stars realm. Chi Yu had been waiting for this opportunity for a long time. When he had released the 1,000 changes of 4 stars realm, he had used Ming Ming's aura as the center. He was not afraid that she would not be within range. At the same time, his surging Kirin True Fire had also shot into the sky and replaced the energy of the Zodiac Tiger that Su Dong had released. It completely melted away the corrosive light. In this dark red world, the 10 balls of dark green light were especially eye-catching. They were clearly shocked by the sudden appearance of this space. However, it was too late for him to be surprised. Within the 4 stars domain technique, within the 1,000 changes of 4 stars realm, Chi Yu was the master of everything. Even the Bull Demon King had suffered at his hands, let alone these ghosts. The entire 1,000 changes of 4 stars realm had suddenly turned into a blazing hell. Kirin True Fire was burning everywhere. Chi Yu used the 1,000 changes of 4 stars realm to amplify the effect of the 1,000 changes of 4 stars realm and spread his Kirin True Fire. Although his overall offensive power had decreased, he could use the Sumeru Mustard Seed ability in the formation to shrink the area of his domain to a certain extent. Therefore, his offensive power did not decrease by much. At the same time, he used the teleportation ability of his domain to send Ming Ming and the other 3 back to the Zodiac army. Now, he could rest assured and deal with these ghosts in front of him. The dark green energy fluctuated violently under the attack of the Kirin True Fire, and it even let out ear-piercing screeches. However, the dark green mist became dimmer and dimmer, and layers of evil aura were constantly being burned away by the Qilin True Fire. Chi Yu was surprised to find that they were not completely formless. As the dark green mist around their bodies became thinner and thinner, short and black bodies appeared in Chi Yu's vision. This could no longer be used to describe adult. Looking at their appearance, each of them was less than a meter tall. Their bodies were like ribs, completely skin and bones. Their eyes were dark green, and there was not a trace of life in their bodies. They were completely dead. What exactly are these things? Chi Yu could not help but feel puzzled. They look like humans, but do humans look like this? Could it be that the Jili people have come up with some new tricks? Forget it, I'll ask my mother when I get back. She should know. The Kirin True Fire completely burned away the dark green mist. However, the strange thing was that the pitch-black bodies were not afraid of the Kirin True Fire. They let out shrill screams and actually pounced toward Chi Yu. However, these fellows had no energy. Even if they were not afraid of the Kirin True Fire, how could they hurt Chi Yu? It was enough to take one back, but there were 10 of them here. Chi Yu was not a kind person. Kirin transformed into countless sword shadows. In the next moment, the dark red light disappeared. Other than the last ghost, which Chi Yu had sealed and kept into the Kirin Pearl with his origin energy, the remaining 9 had been completely crushed by Kirin. After the 1,000 transformation Big Dipper realm technique was put away, Chi Yu floated in midair and observed the situation below. At this moment, more Jili people soldiers were climbing out of the narrow gorge. However, there were many dense forests beside the narrow gorge. Once there were too many tall Jili people, it would be difficult for them to display their full strength. On the contrary, the circular sawtooth formation of the Zodiac army was extremely effective. Under the leadership of their respective captains, the 12 Zodiac army unleashed their full offensive power. More and more Jili people soldiers were killed by them. Looking at the sturdy scales on the bodies of the Jili people soldiers, the members of the 12 Zodiac army found it hard to imagine that such powerful creatures would continuously lose their lives in their hands. This was the effect of the group training. With abundant energy as a backup, they were full of confidence and could launch more attacks. Whenever any of them was in danger, their captains would appear in time to deal with the danger. This allowed the 12 Zodiac army to unleash their full combat power. Every member of the 12 Zodiac army became more experienced and confident. Chiyu could not help but sigh inwardly as he felt his subordinates happily killing the Jili people below. This is not the 12 Zodiac army. This is clearly a death army. If they can still have such an effect against the powerful Jili people, it would be impossible for them to fight against ordinary humans. Even tens of thousands of humans would not be able to stop them from advancing. An army made up of strong people is indeed different. If it wasn't for the fact that they could only improve their strength through real battles, Chiyu would not have been willing to let them be stained with so much blood. However, it seemed that after experiencing the inhumane torture over the past few days, his subordinates seemed to have become more determined. Chiyu was very satisfied with the fact that his subordinates' willpower had become extremely firm. They did not relent in the face of death before them. Chiyu did not participate in the battle. He had already resolved the key issue. This time, he was not leading his Zodiac army to destroy the Jili tribe. Disregarding the Jili tribe's hidden strength, even if they could do it, Chiyu would not do it. This was not because he was being selfish, but because he did not want to destroy the balance of this world. After all, the era of the ancient beasts was the foundation of his era. If he changed history, then his era would also change. This was not what Chiyu wanted to see. Hence, his purpose in coming here was to train his troops and not to destroy the Jili people. The destruction of the Jili people. This could only be achieved by humans. He could only provide some help to weaken the Jili people. Because of this, Chiyu's Zodiac army did not summon the Golden Eagles, nor did they use any weapons. As a result, the casualties of the Jili people were much lower. While Chiyu was watching the battle below, he suddenly saw 3 huge figures floating up from the narrow valley. Their bodies looked huge, reaching a height of more than 10 meters. The way they climbed the rock wall was also very strange. They actually inserted their hands and feet into the rock. This was not something that could be done with great strength. This must be the Jili people's chieftain, Nali. When he saw Nali, Chiyu became excited. This was because the Jili people below could not pressure the Zodiac army. Even Tun could not do it. After all, the Zodiac army was led by the 12 Zodiac guardian gods. Tun could not pose any great threat to them. The appearance of these 3 Nali could obviously change the situation of the battle. The energy aura on their bodies was extremely strong. It could even be said that they were close to the level of a 10,000-year-old beast. Such opponents were obviously the best choice for training. Just the killing intent on Nali's body and the way he appeared made the Zodiac army feel a great threat. This was the first time Chiyu saw Nali. On the surface, not only were the Li much bigger than Tun, the color of their scales was also different from Tun's. The color of Tun's scales was similar to that of an ordinary Jili people, except that it was a slightly darker green. The Li were completely different. The color of their scales was dark red. Their eyes were also dark red. Their entire bodies were filled with a bloodthirsty killing intent. However, they were not as rough as they looked. When the 3 Nali appeared, they continuously shouted in the language of the Jili people. The Jili people surrounding the Zodiac army immediately retreated, creating a large space. This made it impossible for the Zodiac army to continue fighting. The three Nali slowly walked through the crowd. Their subordinates naturally opened a path for them. The Nali's eyes flashed with a faint red light. One of them stared at Chiyu, who was in midair, while the other two strode forward. All the Nali gathered behind them. There were a total of 8 of them. Previously, when Chiyu killed 5 of the Nali, it could be said that it was a big blow to the Jili people. Now, they obviously did not want to be defeated one by one. Although the Jili people's soldiers could not be said to be in an orderly formation, their ferocious aura did not weaken in the slightest because of the death of their comrades. Every one of them released a ferocious aura. They were worthy of being the descendants of Chiyu, the ferocious god of the ancient times. The three Nali walked until they were 20 meters away from the Zodiac army before stopping. Their 10-meter-tall bodies brought great pressure to the Zodiac army soldiers. Their arms were even thicker than tree trunks. The blood-red energy on their bodies surged. A fishy smell continuously emanated from the Nali's bodies. The gazes in their eyes also became wilder and wilder. Chiyu quietly looked at the three Nali, waiting to see what they were going to do. Looking at Chiyu, the Nali's eyes were filled with hatred. Using the language of the two clan, he said, "Who are you people?" His voice buzzed, and the entire narrow valley continuously reverberated. Chiyu calmly said, "Can't you see our attire? We are the two clan." The Nali's gaze swept from Chiyu's body to the others below. He shook his head and said, "No, you are not two clan. The two clan does not look like you. However, no matter who you are, you have killed so many of our clansmen today, so you are the enemies of the Jili people. I want you to become food for the great Jili people." Chiyu coldly laughed and calmly said, "That will only work if you are able to do it. At least, based on the previous battle, I'm afraid that is impossible." The hatred in the Nali's eyes became more and more intense. "I can spare your lives. Hand over the May that you captured just now, and I will let you leave." Chiyu's heart jumped. To the Zodiac army, today's battle results were already very glorious. At least 2,000 Jili people had died or been killed by them. However, the Nali in front of him had actually said that as long as he was willing to release the May, he would let them leave. The May that he was referring to should be the 10 fellows from before. It could be seen that the May definitely had a very high status among the Jili people. Furthermore, they must have some secret. They had really made the right decision to kill today. "May? Are you talking about those fellows from before that were like ghosts? I also wanted to let them go, but what a pity! They had already been turned into ashes by my attack. Everyone has the right to kill evil people like you." "What?" Nali angrily stomped his foot, causing the ground to tremble. He glared at Chiyu and did not seem to have any intention of saying anything else. Kill all these humans for me." As he spoke, he was the first to charge forward. He casually uprooted a large tree from the side of the narrow valley. The 10-meter-long tree was like a straw in his hand, as if it did not weigh anything at all. The tree swept across and headed straight for the Zodiac army. The other two Nali also charged forward at the same time. Their bodies lit up with a red glow, and surging energy surged into their hands. Their 10-meter-tall bodies pressed forward like a fortress. The 8 Natans and thousands of Jili soldiers had already surrounded the Zodiac Legion, leaving no room for escape. The battle had begun once again. Chapter 230. In this world where only the strong were respected, the more powerful one was, the higher one's position would be. This was very obvious among the Jili people. The reason why the Nali could become the chief of the Jili people was closely related to their strength. The three Nali's attacks were extremely powerful. As soon as they launched their attacks, the Zodiac Guardian warriors immediately responded. Ryue, Guanping, Changjie, and Modi separated from their own teams and faced the three Nali. Their teams were temporarily led by Jida and the other three Nali. Under the increasing pressure, the Zodiac army's combat power was no longer as sharp as it was at the beginning. After all, there were only 100 of them, while the Jili people had thousands of soldiers. In fact, there were tens of thousands of Jili people's soldiers in the narrow valley. The Jili people's soldiers could attack continuously. On the other hand, the Zodiac army on Chi Yu's side had more than 100 people. Almost every single one of them was constantly fighting. Although their bodies had already been transformed by the energy of the source of nature and were much stronger than before, and their own energy had also been strengthened with Chi Yu's help, fighting against so many Jili tribe soldiers was still a challenge for them. His own energy was still in the process of constantly decreasing. Chi Yu was very satisfied with this situation, because this was the best training for the Zodiac army. Now, everyone knew that the enemies they were facing were not the black and white dragons that Chi Yu had summoned. The slightest carelessness could lead to a fatal disaster. Therefore, they were extremely focused during the battle, afraid that something bad would happen. The battle continued. The number of casualties among the Jili people increased at a much slower rate than before. The members of the Zodiac army also started to get injured. The Zodiac Guardian warriors gradually became the main fighting force. After all, their energy levels were relatively longer. The Jili people no longer appeared in the canyon because there was no more space above. However, with his spiritual power, Chi Yu could tell that the Jili people had taken a detour from both sides of the narrow gorge. It seemed like they were trying to block their escape route. Looking at it, the members of the Zodiac army were finding it increasingly difficult to hold on. Although Ryue's group of 4 was very strong, the 3 Nalis were too abnormal. Their abnormal defense was even stronger than a tortoise's. The 4 Zodiac Guardian gods' attack power was very strong. However, aside from Ryue, the other 3 could only leave some marks on Li's body. Even Ryue would find it difficult to truly harm these Nali. Li was the strongest. Their arms were extremely sturdy, even harder than rocks. Every time Ryue and the others used powerful skills, Li would always use his arms to release a surging red energy to defend against the opponent's attack. Although they could not harm the Zodiac Guardian God's warriors, the Zodiac Guardian God's warriors could only inflict some light injuries on them. This situation caused Chi Yu to be extremely shocked. No wonder Irua, the black tortoise, and the green dragon were unable to force these Jili people to retreat. Li was actually this strong. Chi Yu was wondering if he should prepare to retreat. The objective of today's battle had been achieved, and the Zodiac army's warriors had obtained a good training. Right at this moment, he suddenly felt a strong sense of danger. He almost instinctively moved his body to the side. However, his movements were still a little too slow. He let out a groan as an extremely domineering and sharp energy shot past his left arm. The Kirin mirror on Chi Yu's body shot out in all directions, and the scales on his left arm were completely shattered. Fortunately, Chi Yu had adjusted the Kirin mirror at the last moment, which allowed him to defend against most of the attack. In addition, he had used his ability to divert the force to the maximum, which allowed him to dodge the domineering energy when the Kirin mirror was sliced in half. Chi Yu's heart suddenly sank. He could not imagine what kind of energy could actually pose such a huge threat to him. Among all the attacks he had faced before, only the Xianyuan sword and the goddess Athena's spear that Yamu had obtained after she had truly transformed into Athena had such power. Furthermore, it required a huge amount of energy to support it. Although his right arm had not suffered any real damage, it had been completely numbed by the surging energy. If he wanted to recover his battle ability, he would need some time to adjust. A grand voice that sounded a little strange sounded. Your reaction isn't slow at all. No wonder you dared to bring people to kill your way here. Chi Yu's body had already turned in midair. Hesitating for a huge threat to appear, he subconsciously put away the Kirin mirror and the Kirin mirror that had been sliced in half and entered the second stage of Kirin's origin mutation. As long as he did not die, Even if the Kirin octatic treasures were broken, it would be repaired by his origin energy, so there was nothing to worry about. When Chi Yu turned around, he discovered that a person had appeared behind him. It was a person who gave off an extremely strange feeling. This person was about the same height as him. Through the inspection of his spiritual power, he realized that this person was covered in a layer of black armor from head to toe, and had a head of white hair that was combed in the middle and hung down on both sides. His face was very handsome, but he also looked extremely cold. His eyes were a pair of black and purple, and there were no white pupils, which looked extremely strange. Chi Yu was surprised to find that at this moment, other than the color of the eyes, this person actually looked 80% similar to him. Especially in terms of attire, like him, they both had scales to protect their bodies, and white hair hung down. However, compared to him, this person was slightly more handsome, and his hair was longer than his. His white hair was filled with an evil aura, and it was not as pale as his own white hair. Kirin's origin energy was activated subconsciously, and Chi Yu's eyes and hair turned silver. Under the effect of Kirin's origin energy, his vision recovered. He immediately focused his gaze on the man's right hand. This was because there was an axe in his hand, a very strange-looking axe. The axe was not very big, and it was a short battle axe. However, from the workmanship of the metal, it was clearly not something that belonged to this era. The entire battle axe had a silver luster, and magnificent patterns appeared on the axe's handle. As for the axe's blade, which was as wide as half a wheel, there was a bit of a dense aura, and the entire axe seemed to be wrapped in a layer of silver mist. Although it was only a short battle axe, and did not look very powerful, the indistinct domineering aura, and the tyrannical attack that it had produced before, shocked Chi Yu. Xuanyuan's soul had not yet recovered from the 100 days of meditation. However, at this moment, Xuanyuan's sword was constantly buzzing in Chi Yu's body. Being able to cause the fluctuation of Xuanyuan's sword, and also in the form of an axe, Chi Yu thought of a possibility. "The axe in your hand, sir. Is it the axe that the great god Pangu used to split the heavens and earth?" Chi Yu tried to calm himself down as he asked this question. He did not know the identity of the person in front of him, but from the evil aura that was emitted from his body, it was obvious that he was not on the same side as him. Otherwise, he would not have sneaked up on him. He could not help but feel a lingering fear. It seemed that spiritual power was not everything. At the very least, he did not notice this person's attack earlier. If he had not reacted quickly enough, his body might have been split into two by now. The white-haired person's eyes revealed an evil glint. "Not bad. You have good eyesight. This is Panga's axe. The Panga's axe that can cut through all obstacles." After this white-haired person appeared, the battle below stopped. The three Nali led all the Jili people, and quickly retreated tens of meters away. They raised their heads to look at the sky and seemed to be mumbling something. Chi Yu inhaled a breath of cold air. "Is it really Panga's axe?" The white-haired person's next sentence caused the shock in Chi Yu's heart to suddenly double. "I, Chi Yu, am the devil god and the founder of the Jili people. Do you think that I would lie to a human like you?" "Chi Yu, you are actually Chi Yu?" This person's appearance gave Chi Yu too many surprises. "Panga's axe, Chi Yu. Chi Yu actually obtained Panga's axe. Oh my god!" Back then, even with the help of the Xianyuan sword, Huang Emperor could only barely defeat him. Now that Chi Yu suddenly obtained Panga's axe, it would bring about destruction to this era. No wonder that attack just now was so tyrannical. It was actually an attack from Panga's axe. Chi Yu's appearance was completely different from what Chi Yu had imagined. In his imagination, Chi Yu must be like Nali, or even more ferocious than Nali. However, the Chi Yu in front of him looked like a domineering and handsome youth. Chi Yu's heart sank, but he still could not help but ask, "Chi Yu, didn't you die in the hands of Huang Emperor? Could it be that the 5 horses tearing you apart was fake?" Hearing Chi Yu's words, Qi Yu's dark purple eyes immediately exploded with intense hatred. Don't mention the two words Huang Emperor in front of me. That's right, I was split up by him back then. However, how could I, Qi Yu, die so easily? As a demon god between heaven and earth, I have endless energy. As long as my aura still exists, there is a possibility of resurrection. However, Huang Emperor also indirectly helped me. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't have been able to make up my mind to spend so many years searching for Panga's axe, which has no special requirements. After obtaining Panga's axe, I realized how important this artifact is to me. With it, in this world, I will be invincible, and there will no longer be any power that can stop me from ruling the whole world. Looking at Qi Yu and feeling the unpredictable huge energy in his body, the silver light in Qi Yu's eyes became more and more intense. Is it really like this? Then I have to try. If I remember correctly, among the 10 great ancient artifacts, Panga's axe is only ranked 3rd. There are 2 more before it. Don't be ridiculous, I have the artifact that defeated you in the past. A golden light suddenly lit up, and an incomparably sharp king's qi suddenly emerged. The huge Xianyuan sword appeared, and the light of the sun, moon, and stars suddenly illuminated the night. Perhaps feeling the aura of the Xianyuan sword, Panga's axe suddenly erupted with a layer of intense, silver-white light. The domineering aura and the king's qi collided in the air. One sword and one axe, at the same time, produced a strong buzzing sound. Qi Yu and Qi Yu's bodies shook at the same time. Qi Yu let out a muffled groan, obviously suffering a small loss. In the competition of artifacts, he was temporarily at a disadvantage. After all, without Xuanyuan's soul, the Xianyuan sword could not compare to the complete Pangu axe. The difference in power between these 2 artifacts was very small. Seeing Xianyuan's sword, Qi Yu's pupils instantly contracted, and a cold voice squeezed out from the gaps of his teeth. Xianyuan's sword, it's Xianyuan's sword again. Could it be that you are a descendant of Huang Emperor? Qi Yu proudly said, That's right, as a descendant of the Yellow Emperor, I am naturally a descendant of Huang Emperor. At the same time, I am also His Majesty Huang Emperor's only disciple. In the past, my master was able to dismember your body with 5 horses. Today, why can't I do the same thing? Qi Yu laughed. He suddenly burst out laughing. Student, who do you think you are? Huang Emperor? Even if Huang Emperor was here now, he would not be my opponent. However, I do want to thank you. In my life, defeating the Xianyuan sword is the thing that I want to achieve the most. Today, I have this opportunity. I will let you see how Xianyuan sword breaks into 2 under my Panga's axe. The silver light became stronger and stronger, and a huge, overbearing qi directly launched a huge pressure towards Qi Yu. Ryua's anxious voice came into Qi Yu's ears. Qi Yu, activate the 12 Zodiac's protective field. Qi Yu shook his head and indifferently said, It's useless, we are not proficient in the field. In the face of an ancient artifact like Panga's axe, the effect of the field is extremely limited. Moreover, this is a battle between the Xianyuan sword and Panga's axe, and also a battle between Huang Emperor and Qi Yu. No matter how you look at it, I can't back down. This is a matter between the 2 of us, don't interfere. Immediately retreat with everyone, and if you encounter any obstacles, summon the golden-winged eagle. Qi Yu! Ryua anxiously shouted again, but this time Qi Yu could no longer answer her, because at this time, Qi Yu's attention was completely focused on Qi Yu. He was very clear that Qi Yu would either not move, or as long as he launched an attack, it would be like a thunderbolt. A faint cold light flashed in Qi Yu's eyes. The one-handed Xianyuan sword in his hand became 2-handed, and the energy of Kiran's origin, combined with the energy of the origin of nature, was unreservedly injected into the Xianyuan sword. The huge energy aura made the golden light emitted by the Xianyuan sword become more and more intense. Qi Yu's eyes revealed a trace of surprise. The intensity of your energy actually exceeds that of Huang Emperor. It seems that human beings are a race that can easily create miracles. I just don't know what you paid for it. Chi-Yu coldly looked at Chi-Yu. Human beings have always been a race with strong creativity. Don't tell me you only know now? Your existence can only end in destruction. Chi-Yu slowly raised the Pengu axe in his hand horizontally. Is that really the case? Good. I want to see how you can destroy me. Chi-Yu moved. In the case that the Xianyuan sword did not have an advantage over the Pengu axe, he must now know to what extent Chi-Yu's strength had reached. In the second stage of origin mutation, he almost raised his strength to the peak, almost as fast as teleportation. The Xianyuan sword flashed with a golden light, and directly slashed at Chi-Yu's head. Chi-Yu's movement was not slower than Chi-Yu's. Both of them wore black armor, and the difference between their white hair and silver hair was not big, but the artifacts in their hands were the best way to distinguish them. The golden Xianyuan sword and the silver Pengu axe instantly collided in midair. An incomparably loud buzzing sound suddenly broke out from the center of the collision between the two artifacts. Just as Chi-Yu had said. In the confrontation between artifacts of this level, he and Chi-Yu were both recognized as masters by the artifact. As extremely sharp super artifacts, any domain could be said to be of little effect in front of them. Therefore, after the real battle began, the direct contest of energy became the key to deciding the outcome. Chi-Yu's body was thrown back, and the speed at which he bounced back was much faster than when he rushed forward. His face became paler than before, and the Xianyuan sword in his hand was still buzzing. The light of the sun, moon, and stars on the sword had dimmed a lot. Although there was no mark left on the sword, everyone knew that in the collision just now, he had already lost. Chi-Yu was still floating there. The light of the Pengu axe in his hand became more dazzling, and the Pengu axe was also buzzing, but its buzzing seemed to be complacent. What a strong energy! Chi-Yu looked at Chi-Yu, and the light in his eyes became more and more concentrated. According to the era, Chi-Yu's life was probably more than 10,000 years old. No one knew what kind of creature he was. He was the ancestor of the Jili people, but he looked like a human. If he was a human, it was no wonder that he had such a strong energy after cultivating with a human body for more than 10,000 years. The current Chi-Yu, in Chi-Yu's opinion, he was definitely not weaker than the Chaos King, the Deep-Sea Hades Dragon King, and the others. Together with the Pengu axe, he might even be stronger. Such a strong strength made the fighting spirit in Chi-Yu's heart become stronger and stronger. Just like how he asked his subordinates to fight under great pressure, he also looked forward to being able to improve his strength in the confrontation with opponents who were stronger than him. Of course, this situation was also extremely dangerous, at least for now. Chi-Yu was not at all confident that he could defeat Chi-Yu. He was not even confident that he could escape unscathed from Chi-Yu's Pengu axe. Chi-Yu did not chase after him, but looked at Chi-Yu with a trace of disdain on his face. I was wondering how the strength of a human could reach such a level. It turns out that you are just a Kirin. You are just borrowing the body of a human. However, you and I are still too far apart. Even if the current king of Kirin were here, he would not be able to fight against me. At this moment, Ryue had already started to retreat with the 12 Zodiac warriors. However, while Chi-Yu was fighting with Chi-Yu in the air, the Jili people on the ground were not idling around either. Under the leadership of the 3 Nali, they had already surrounded the Zodiac army. At this moment, the battle had become very intense. The sudden attack by the Zodiac army had caused them to suffer too many losses. Even though they had been prepared, Chi-Yu's strength had caused them to lose thousands of their fighting strength. The loss of the 10 Na-Mei was especially unbearable for the Jili people. It was also because of the death of the Na-Mei that Chi-Yu had personally taken action. Chi-Yu smiled and a cold light flashed in his eyes. He clasped his hands in front of his chest, and rays of intense light continuously erupted from the Xianyuan sword in his hands. At this moment, he only had eyes for Chi-Yu. Regardless of whether he won or lost, Chi-Yu was absolutely excited to be able to fight with the legendary ancient demon god. Just like when he had first met Emperor Huang, the blood in his body was now completely boiling. He knew that Chi-Yu was much more powerful than him, and he also had the support of Pengu Axe, but he still had no intention of retreating. Chi-Yu looked at Chi-Yu calmly. The evil light in his eyes had converged a little. "Why aren't you talking? Don't you want to talk to me a little more to buy time so that you can recover some of your energy?" Chi-Yu replied calmly, "I have as much energy as I can. What's the use of buying time? Do you think you can double my energy? I'm already very excited to be able to fight with the ancient demon god Chi-Yu. Senior Chi-Yu, come on." For some unknown reason, when he looked at the powerful demon god in front of him and felt the domineering aura of Pengu Axe, Chi-Yu felt a sense of admiration in his heart. Chi-Yu had been defeated by Emperor Huang. Although he did not die, he must have been seriously injured. He had endured for so many years and had even found Pengu Axe. This showed how persevering his character was. Chi-Yu had seen with his own eyes how abnormal the conditions for the 10 great divine weapons to recognize him as their master were. If it weren't for his little tricks and luck, he wouldn't have been able to gain the recognition of the Xianyuan sword. The Pengu Axe had always been as famous as the Xianyuan sword, so Chi-Yu had probably suffered much more than him. His comeback this time was obviously because he had great confidence that he could destroy the human race. Furthermore, with his personality, humans were probably only the first target of the Jili people. The Jili people's next target would probably be the divine beast. In the end, who could say whether the great demon god Chi-Yu would target the ferocious beasts? Based on his arrogant personality, he wouldn't be able to do anything. It was very likely. Chi-Yu's eyes revealed a trace of admiration. "Dong, you're not bad." As a combination of human and Kirin, he mastered the Xianyuan sword. If it wasn't for the fact that his cultivation wasn't high enough, he would have posed a threat to me. Among the Jili people, there is a lack of talents like you. If you're willing, I can even let you join my faction. Below me, you are the greatest. What do you think? Chi-Yu looked at Chi-Yu in amusement and said, "I've already killed so many of your subordinates. Don't you feel heartache?" Chi-Yu pursed his lips. "So what if some people die? Although the Jili people's warriors are more difficult to train, in my opinion, compared to you, they are much stronger." The difference in value was too great. How was it? Consider my offer. The Pengu Axe and the Xianyuan sword appeared at the same time. Although your strength is not as good as mine, with my help, you will definitely become an expert who is second only to me. Even when I die of old age, you can take over my position. Chi-Yu smiled and said, "It doesn't sound like much. Senior Chi-Yu, you have a long way to go in persuading. Cut the crap and make your move. Let's see if your Pengu Axe can deal with my Xianyuan sword. Since ancient times, good and evil have never coexisted. I'm afraid that my master, His Majesty Emperor Huang, will immediately jump out and kill me." Chi-Yu was stunned for a moment. Could it be that Huang Emperor isn't dead yet? No, that's impossible. He's just an ordinary human. Although he had obtained the Pengu Axe, Chi-Yu was still a little afraid of Emperor Huang. Chi-Yu did not say anything else. He responded to Chi-Yu with his own actions. His body suddenly floated forward, and the Xianyuan divine sword in his hand agilely transformed into specks of golden light in the air, heading straight for Chi-Yu. Chi-Yu was extremely powerful. However, he was too familiar with the Xianyuan sword. Even if his strength had increased a lot compared to before, he absolutely did not dare to use his own body to collide with a super artifact like the Xianyuan sword. The Pengu Axe in his hand flashed, and the originally not very big axe suddenly expanded. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a giant axe with a length of 30 feet. The surface of the axe was nearly 2 meters wide, and it looked like a door. The enlarged Pengu Axe did not bring any difficulty to Chi-Yu. The nimble giant axe flew up and down, forming a silver light curtain that blocked the attack of the Xianyuan sword. For the first time, the sharpness of the Xianyuan sword lost its original effect. Clear and melodious clashing sounds were constantly issued as it collided with the Panguak. Although the two artifacts did not show any signs of damage, every time they collided, Qi Yu's face would turn a little paler. At this time, he was not only withstanding pressure, but also Qi Yu's powerful strength. Qi Yu's energy, which was exerted through the Panguaks, was much stronger than the Xianyuan sword without the soul of the Xianyuan sword. In terms of strength, Qi Yu was far behind Qi Yu. After all, he had just entered the Seven Clouds realm. Even the four auspicious clouds, Ink Kirin, could not compare with an ancient demon god like Qi Yu. Qi Yu was also very clear about his advantage. Although he did not understand why he felt that the power of the Xianyuan sword was not as strong as before, he would not give up the opportunity. After all, the Xianyuan sword was the only offensive artifact that could threaten him after he obtained the Panguak. How could he be satisfied if he did not take this opportunity to destroy the other party? The energy in Qi Yu's body fluctuated violently under the effect of the overbearing aura that was constantly reflected by the Panguak. It was like a raging sea in his body. Even Qi Yu's source of nature body could not bear it. However, he did not have the slightest intention of stopping. In the face of such a powerful enemy and such a good opportunity to train, Qi Yu raised his combat strength to the limit. At the same time, he completely focused his mental strength on his body and fought head-on with Qi Yu. The battle below had also changed. In the time it took for Qi Yu and Qi Yu to collide, the Zodiac army below had already begun to suffer. Although none of the members had died under the protection of the Zodiac guardian god warriors, the proportion of injuries was rapidly increasing. The enemies could take turns to attack, but the members of the Zodiac squad could not. There were only 100 people in total. After persisting in such a long high-intensity battle, and the enemy was so strong, they were now like an arrow at the end of its flight. After receiving Qi Yu's order, Ryuan knew it was time to leave. She let out a domineering dragon roar. At the same time as the second stage of attribute mutation, she finally displayed her most powerful divine dragon transformation. A huge white dragon suddenly appeared. With a flick of its tail, it forcefully pushed Anali back. The dragon's wings stirred up a huge amount of white light that scattered evenly around the Zodiac army. The Jili people soldiers who were surrounding them immediately cried out in pain. Their attacks were temporarily stopped. Ryua shouted, "Summon!" Obeying orders from their superiors without hesitation had become a very good tradition for the 12 Zodiac squad. The members did not even think before they immediately summoned their own great golden-winged eagles from within their bodies. In an instant, the golden light shone brightly. Just the change in aura brought about by the appearance of over 100 great golden-winged eagles was enough to cause the Jili people soldiers to pause for a moment. They did not dare to attack recklessly. With the sudden appearance of so many great golden-winged eagles, even Qi Yu, who was fighting with Qi Yu in the sky, could not help but change his expression, let alone the Nali who were in charge of commanding the troops below. Qi Yu, who was fighting with Qi Yu in the sky, could not help but change his expression when so many great golden-winged eagles suddenly appeared, let alone the Nali who were in charge of commanding the troops below. Following Qi Yu's instructions, Ru Yu did not allow her team members to command the golden-winged great pings to attack. While intimidating the opponent, she hurriedly called for everyone to fly onto their mount. The Zodiac warriors who did not have the ability to fly also chose the strongest golden-winged great pings from their team members to sit on. Following Ru Yu's command, hundreds of golden-winged great pings immediately flew up,